If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
You are listening to Mindshock True Crime. This is the Delphi case series, episode 47, Sealed. We will be examining the latest court developments in the charging of Richard Allen, and why all of these affidavits and documents are still sealed, what they could possibly contain, the bail situation, and mind-shocking revelations from the mouth of so-called official court officials that Richard Allen may not have acted alone. Now, of course, the coincidence theorists, the Dunning-Kruger crowd getting triggered at any notion of this kind of speculation, it's weird because these goofs were so sure that Richard Allen was not only bridge guy but acted alone, and they made sure everybody knew how sure they were. They were hallucinating to know this information for sure somehow. And these authority-worshipping cultist goofs chastised anyone who dared you employ any modicum of critical thinking in entertaining any possibility that Richard Allen might not be the only criminal out there in relation to what happened to Libby and Abby. Of course, here on Mindshock, this is a logical podcast with logic and reason at the forefront. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. We do not hallucinate to know things that are not known. I mean, these kinds of basics of logic, one would think the average adult would understand them. Clearly not. Just visit any comment section on social media. But anyway, in typical Mindshock fashion, we will be examining the latest revelations. These revelations do not come as a surprise to many who think that there might have been some kind of ring involved, possibly connecting Keegan Kline and possibly Tony Kline as well to Richard Allen. And Cody, the coincidences surrounding Cody Patty we went over in the previous episode as well. Is it all mere coincidence? Again, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. The motto of the podcast here is, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. As always, if you find the podcast interesting and informative, want to help keep up awareness in unsolved cases, cold cases, wrongful convictions, and more, and just keeping up awareness in many, many cases that, of course, justice and closure is deserved, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. Alright, so very interesting post here by reporter Russ McQuaid on his Twitter. One of the main reasons the prosecutor wants to keep the probable case or cause affidavit under seal is because he believes other people are involved in the death of Libby German and Abby Williams. Big new element. I mean, not new for anybody who's been following the case, but potentially. Obviously, many people surmised that there were potentially a circle of individuals involved. A minimum of 2, but possibly 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, who knows how many scumbags there are. Some posters here on Mindshock, actually on the YouTube, I think they stated somewhere 40 plus registered sex offenders were living in the immediate area of the bridge. 40 plus. And they speculate, or some people do, that it's theoretically possible that Libby and Abby did interact with more than one scumbag, and the two scumbags might not have had anything to do with each other. And one of these scumbags, either alone or not, ended up killing them. But the other scumbag, which they may or may not have been interacting with on social media and may or may not have been meeting under the guise of some kind of catfish, some are actually speculating that Libby and Abby themselves were playing a dangerous game in trying to lure predators and possibly also inform police of their desire to do so. That long-standing rumor that Libby was scheduled to go to the police station and make some kind of statement regarding something, nobody knows what, even within the rumor, there's not much to that rumor. So they are making the case that Libby was ready to film and have this guy on Snapchat or in the cloud or whatever because they suspected, or Libby and Abby suspected, that one of these criminals was catfishing them, so they were ready to record him and report him. And they obviously didn't understand the level of danger that could be involved with something like that. I mean, perhaps they thought it was someone else closer to their age that was also involved in illegal activity, so it just didn't occur to them that it might get violent or excessive. I mean, I don't know. Again, these are all just rumors. This is all just speculation. But if there are 40 plus registered sex offenders, I mean, just the amount of sheer scumbags in that area, I mean, that's kind of alarming. Some people say that's in every area, but it's not really. I mean, you could look up on the sex offender registry. Again, just because they're not registered doesn't mean, I mean, there's a lot of problems with the registry as well. There are actually convicted individuals who are not registered, even though they have been convicted of certain crimes. But it's a big mess, and theoretically, it is possible that they might have interacted with more than one scumbag that was not related to their murder. It is theoretically possible. So, we have definitive information here stating that the prosecutor believes other people are involved. So, the wording here is weird. In some accounts, because only the people in the courtroom know exactly what was going on there, but some accounts they're saying may be involved. Here it's stating he believes other people are involved in the death of Libby and Abby. Are. Not maybe, but actually are. Now, that doesn't mean they are. That means he believes they are. So, I mean, yeah, it's really, really tough. On the Libby and Abby subreddit, there are, of course, a lot of astute posters there. A lot of Dunning-Kruger groups, but a lot of astute posters as well, and discussing various aspects of this supposedly new element, but we, of course, have been talking about it since day one. On Mindshock, anyway. Barbara is on HLN right now talking about what happened inside the courtroom this morning if anybody wants to tune in. Richard Allen made eye contact with several members of the victims' families, made eye contact for several seconds, scanned the rows the family members were sitting. He took in the environment and scanned the room a lot, rather than keeping his head down. He didn't say a single word during today's proceedings, this being November 22nd, 2002. Defense attorneys say that they and Richard Allen want these documents public. Prosecutors provided the judge with a redacted version to consider releasing. So the judge hasn't even seen the unredacted version. The hearing scheduled for January 2023 will be blended with the new hearing scheduled for February 2023, so no hearing in January any longer, from what I understood. Okay. So let's examine these two elements, because they are, I mean, this is crazy stuff. I mean, this is quite an unusual case, regardless of what you think happened. I mean, the case, the crime itself, the aftermath, and the court proceedings here, I mean, this is just bizarre. So, of course, there are different types of criminals. Now, it's tough to make a determination here because, yes, certain criminals, especially if they feel shame, they will not look family members in the eye. They'll just sit there with their heads down. Anybody that's followed true crime or watched a lot of court cases, they will see this. And then you have psychopaths and sociopaths who enjoy inflicting pain on others. They'll actually smile, flick their tongue, make statements to the family or to anyone. They'll revel in the public and the aftermath of the crime. And others still are just stone cold, which is what appear. I mean, they didn't specifically describe Alan as that, but he didn't say anything. But he looked in the eyes of several of the family members, made eye contact. What does that mean? I mean, there's not enough there. You know, we don't know his expression or anything, but it is interesting to note that he at least wasn't the type of person to be deeply ashamed. Now, someone made a post on the previous podcast that Richard Allen has totally mentally ill. And he somehow blacked out the memories, if he's responsible, either alone or not. He blacked out those memories So that way he was able to go work at CVS. Not just him, but I mean, it is interesting. I mean, perhaps I'll do a psychological podcast on that regarding certain serial killers who they actually memory hole their own crimes. And then they're able to function in society at their job. They're able to interact perfectly normally with all these people because in their own mind it's almost like they convinced themselves they didn't do it. And mental illnesses mental illness is just a vast spectrum of possibilities. The mind is very complex. So is that what happened here? Again, I'm not alleging it is, but one of the posters on the previous Mindshock podcast did make that comment. I thought it was quite interesting because on Mindshock, we go down every rabbit hole, we explore every single theory, and that is one I actually hadn't considered before in this case. So good on that poster for bringing that up. Because some people do find it strange that he just went on living his life completely as normal. Now, certain serial killers do that, but they also continue killing on the side. So it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Now, the second aspect of that, the defense attorneys say that they and Richard Allen himself want these documents public. Now, one has to speculate. Why would Richard Allen want everybody to know what's in those documents? Now, if he's either innocent or he was somehow coerced, I mean, if there's some angle here that we're not seeing at the moment, which is very possible, obviously we do not know what law enforcement knows. A lot of these documents are, of course, sealed, so we do not know a lot of information. I mean, it's possible even that different law enforcement groups, perhaps the FBI knows things that Delphi doesn't know, or Indiana State Police. I mean, again, we don't know the dynamics and the play between these agencies. In other cases, like, a case that comes to mind that I cover on Mindcheck, of course, the Amy Mihalovic case. I mean, there are some serious issues between the FBI and local law enforcement where each party might have had information the other party did not. And obviously, they weren't cooperating. The case is as of yet unsolved in the Amy Mihalovic case. You could check that out on Mindshock as well, ongoing series there. So we don't know any of this information here. So is Richard Allen guilty, but somehow he knows that the law was not followed, and that as a result he'll go free because of that? Even if he's guilty, or if he's innocent, or his guilt is so minor. Like, let's say, again, just thinking out loud here, this is Mindshock, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. If he was perhaps involved in some kind of lower level crimes, or some kind of online ring with Keegan Kline and possibly others, and he had no intention or knowledge that there would be any kind of murder. Therefore, obviously, his charges would be less if he's not involved in any murder, but if he is involved with the murderers, there's a connection there. That's a lesser crime, and he would want everybody to know that because right now everybody thinks that he's the killer, possibly the lone killer. So that could be a reason why he wants all the documents public. And then another possibility, again, however remote, is that he's completely innocent of everything. And he's a completely set up patsy. Now, a lot of times patsies are not chosen because they're squeaky clean. They're chosen because they have other criminal records or tendencies, or they're guilty of other things, so it's a better fit. So I don't know how many people out there believe that Richard Allen is completely squeaky clean, 100% innocent of all crimes, major or minor, in relation to this case and any other case. I don't know. Maybe there are people like that out there. Again, I actually, don't have a position. I don't know any of these people. I don't know any of this information. I do not claim anything is untrue. Some follow-up posts here. It's quite interesting how Richard Allen is happy with it being public. Don't think he would be wanting this if there was something clearly incriminating in there. Yes, this certainly made me raise my eyebrows a bit. Anxious Whale posted this. I don't think it's anything to gather reasonable inferences from. It's a good defense strategy for multiple reasons. For one, they know they're saying that won't cause it to get unsealed for a while. Maybe even 2+ months at the next date. Either way, so it risks no skin and plants a seed for the narrative that he's being railroaded. Secondly, the possibility of others involved is going to be relevant to their trial strategy. If there's others, it gives wiggle room for who actually took their lives. The longer that's in the public domain with people heavily obsessed over this case, the more time there is for other theories of the crime to grow, and their voir dire juror process aside, it allows the defense to get free real-time data as to what angle for his potential innocence seems to work with the public. Imagine how useful these subreddits would be. Third, depending on what method or reasoning law enforcement has to believe that there may be others involved, those potential others knowing how or why they're suspected could help this attorney's client, Richard Allen, out by allowing these potential others to obfuscate, muddy the waters, trip up, and implicate themselves, at which point they'd lay into them like a pit bull. Quit using whatever avenue or method law enforcement is using to look into these possibilities, some of which could be ongoing and also implicate Richard Allen. Possibilities are innumerable. One hypothetical. If they've got something through the dark web, a wiretap, or communications from one end only, via some encrypted app, revealing these things in the PC allows for a switch of use from that hypothetical website or channel, could increase the probability of fumbles or technicalities taking place that would make the evidence that also loops in Richard Allen somehow inadmissible, or could allow for deletion or ridding of evidence that may be out there. Regardless, it's a smart PR move from the defense attorney because now it's planted that seed of doubt, whether it's a bluff or not. It can't be called for up to a few months while it grows. They know people are going to froth in the info vacuum and go crazy with theorizing. Another post here. I will say it probably means there's no huge smoking gun in the probable cause affidavit, or super prejudicial information that might be considered inadmissible at trial. If you're in this defense and that kind of information is in it, you may want to keep it sealed so that it's not public and tainting a potential jury pool early on. Since you may try to get evidence excluded before trial, it doesn't mean the case is bad or weak. Yeah, I mean, those are all interesting and very good points as well. Other posts are stating here that the wording was unclear as he was scanning the courtroom. Some people believe he was looking for his own family. But still, again, without being there, you wouldn't know that exactly or be able to... We can't really analyze the body language or anything like that. Fox News 59 also reported official. In today's hearing, the prosecutor said, there's reason to believe Allen is not the only one involved in Abby Williams and Libby German's murders. That's interesting phrasing as well. That's the phrasing from Fox 59. There's reason to believe. Not there's a possibility of, so that means there's some kind of foundation there for that. Yeah, I mean, very, very interesting. Some more posts here. I guess my immediate response to this is that prosecutor should tell it to the ISP and Doug Carter because they don't seem to have a problem with unsealing it. Or Doug Carter did say that, but did he just say that and he did not really mean that? I mean, how would we know? Obviously, we wouldn't really know that either. Yet another conflicting element that makes no sense to me. Seems like if Doug Carter believed others to be involved, he wouldn't have made the statement he did about the release of the PCA not harming the investigation or trial before the other party or parties have been arrested, unless, of course, they have already been arrested, as in Keegan Kline. Just my thoughts and opinions. Or they have other people's on watch. Some people actually speculate that they knew it was Richard Allen since day one, and that they've had Richard Allen under surveillance the entire time. Now, if that's true, and I'm not claiming it is, if that's true, perhaps they also have the same in place for all the other potential parties involved. Let's say they think there could be 5 or 10 people involved. If they're all on under surveillance 24/7, then it might not necessarily compromise the investigation. Plus, if they release that information and some of these other people want to run, they can be apprehended while on the run, which can make them look even more guilty and possibly get them to talk quicker. Who knows? Law enforcement has many such tactics as these. Another post here. Interesting that the prosecutor says because of witnesses and other people involved, but nothing states because it may jeopardize another case, as in the pedo ring. Because of witnesses and other people involved, they don't want to release it. As in not to endanger other witnesses? Is that what it's about? Because then you could just redact their name, right? I mean, why would you not release the whole thing, though? Redacted. Release something. From WSBT.com, Allen's defense attorneys said they want the public to have access to the documents, saying the probable cause does not suggest people are in harm's way, or that there are other potential perpetrators. Interesting. Now, so how would they know that if they don't have access to it? Or do they have access to it and they've seen it, it just hasn't been made public? Like, what's the story here? Why is it so hard to make any of these determinations? Everything seems very, very difficult in the Delphi area. I mean, all the way back to calling off a search for 2 missing teens. I mean, this is tough. This is tough. So only 50 people were allowed in the courtroom. This is according to WSBT.com. Allen walked in shackled with a bulletproof vest, stone-faced, as his case was discussed. Interesting. So they had him wear a bulletproof vest, so there's apparently some belief that he might get shot. And that would be crazy, too, especially if he's not guilty. Why investigators believe Richard Allen of Delphi committed the crimes still isn't known, as the documents are sealed. Carroll County prosecutor Nicholas McClelland asked the special judge to keep it that way. Quote, "This is still a very ongoing investigation, and we want to find anyone else involved in this heinous crime and get justice for Abby and Libby," end quote. McClelland argued the sealed documents protect the witnesses mentioned in the charging information, including some juveniles. Wow. Okay. I mean, that's potentially bombshell. Okay, but why not redact all their names, though? And just release, that way the actual bulk of it and the reasons are there without the names. I mean, that's standard operating procedure. I mean, that's what they always do, especially with minors or anytime witnesses might be in danger. But they don't want to release any of it. What does that mean? To support his argument, McClelland included a letter from Libby German's grandma and a worldwide petition with more than 40,000 signatures. McClelland said it would be in the best interest of the public. Quote, "We are a society that wants to know everything right now," end quote. No, but again, just redact all the sensitivity. I mean, redacting documents has been a long time practice in many different cases. The intelligence, I mean, that's what you do. That way you can do everything properly and still protect those that need to be protected. And if there really is that sensitive information that also, in addition to names, they could redact that as well. He went on to mention that Allen's wife was forced to abandon their home and the former judge to recuse the case. However, the defense wants the documents exposed. Bradley Rozzi, one of Allen's defense attorneys, argues the secrecy of the case adds to the public interest. Quote, "The law enforcement community has reached out to the public for help, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that approach to an investigation, but that's been ongoing for 5 years. And now to turn around and suggest that all that should be confidential, it's just kind of counterintuitive to me," end quote, said Rossi. The defense said they have no other evidence besides the court documents, and they said they're not impressed. Okay, so the defense seems confident. Can that be read into? If they're not impressed with the evidence against Allen, what does that mean? Attorney Andrew Baldwin is anxious for the public to read Allen's charging information. Quote, "Hopefully that's going to ring a bell for somebody to help us out because he is innocent. He has told us that very emotionally. He has thanked us for our help," end quote, said Andrew Baldwin, defense attorney. Okay, so if this is all true, that means that not only is he claiming it is innocent, but his defense attorneys seem to believe that? I mean, he's just definitively stating because he is innocent. The timeline for the special judge's decision isn't known. WSBT has been told she won't be deciding on this today. Allen was granted a bond hearing that's expected to be February 17th. Okay, that's all quite interesting. Quite interesting indeed. I mean, a lot of new information there. So there are juveniles that somehow were witnesses, possibly, according to this information, and that Richard Allen is claiming he's innocent emotionally, and the attorneys believe him. Now, to those that say, of course, everybody always says that they're innocent, but you look at other cases, the defense attorneys don't always mention that. Some of them are just very objective. They're doing their job. They don't mention whether they believe or don't believe the defendant or whether the defendant has even claimed they were innocent. It's just standard operating procedure. Here, they went out of their way to say that. What does that mean? Another poster here. There's just too many coincidences with the Anthony Shots profile. I really have felt like there were other people involved in some way. That's a good point. That's a good point there. I mean, just going back to the second sketch, does it or does it not look like that model? I mean, it just seems to look like so many people, just like the original sketch. It's just really weird. Here's another piece of info that I have not seen before. Wild Raisin posted this. The inmate who was friends with Keegan Kline did say that he thought a third person was with them. And he was told a story from Keegan Kline, whether true or not. So, okay, hold on a second. So in the previous episodes, we did go over that Keegan Kline did say, or someone claimed he said, that he was waiting in the car or whatever, or some kind of lookout. Now the inmate is stating that a third person was with them. I mean, this is actually the first I've heard of this as a direct statement. I don't know where Wild Raisin got this information, but apparently the inmate is, or supposedly, stating that there was a third person. So this is all, of course, second, third-hand stories. I'm not claiming any of this is true or untrue, but previously it was claimed that Keegan Kline was there possibly with somebody else. Now, there's another story that specifically a third person was with them. So the tally is up to 3 in these alleged statements. Alleged. It is kind of weird how all of these people are just definitively claiming that Richard Allen is bridge guy and acted alone. Like, how would they know? It's just so weird. It's so weird. I mean, logic and reason really are going extinct. So here's a very succinct theory by Bryagar. Richard Allen is the only one who actually committed the murders. Keegan Kline, under Anthony's shots, made plans to meet them there that day, then alerted Richard Allen to the time and place, ? And why was Kline searching for the Marathon gas station, and the FBI really did botch the collection of the security footage from that gas station? All, of course, a stone's throw between Richard Allen's house and the CVS where Allen worked at, and the actual bridge and the gas station. So these are all in very close proximity to each other. Then we have the coincidences that Allen supposedly also lived in Peru with Kline, or not with Kline, near Kline, possibly some kind of a neighbor, a few houses over, whatever it would be, and then also possibly with Cody Patty in Delphi. I mean, what is going on here? Like, how many levels of coincidence are there? Bellarina posted this, there have to be bigger fish. Keegan Kline is the bottom of the barrel. Richard Allen is the middle guy. My bet is there's someone else. Is this Tony Kline, or is this someone completely off the radar that nobody knows about? Lolly Dolly posted this. You'd think if Keegan Kline cast a wide enough net to include Richard Allen, it would also involve Tony Kline as well. Maybe just me being my cynical self, but children learn what they're taught. Edited to add that apples don't fall far from trees is my point. And also, like, all along, the people, the authority-worshipping cultists, the Dunning-Kruger crowd, they maintained that since Keegan wasn't charged with their murders, and it just kept being put out there that he's not charged with anything in relation to the murders, that somehow he wasn't involved. But was that the ploy all along? Did they want whoever's involved in this circle, if there's a circle involved, to think that Keegan was only being looked at for other things, and that there was no danger to Keegan giving them up because he's not charged in anything relating to Delphi? Jack the Shark posted this. Yeah, that's my thought too. Someone like Keegan Kline is involved on the very edge of the case. In this scenario, he or someone like him may not even have known about the murders until they were reported in the media. And yes, and possibly the reason for his Googling DNA and the red Jeep rumor, marathon search, etc., etc. I mean, yeah, you would think if someone like Klein, if he facilitated the information and gave it up, and then people end up dead and that was never part of any kind of plan, he would be curious about that. He would be searching that, wouldn't he? Even if he was not responsible for the murder and never even knew a murder was going to take place in the first place. It's some kind of crime gone wrong situation where he thought he was just I mean it's really tough because what do you think could happen when you're actually arranging a meet? Because if they're involved in some kind of illegal media circulation online, that's a little different than actually meeting people in person. But yeah, it's all really weird. Stray Girl posted, there is no way that Keegan Kline or whoever was using the Anthony Shots account communicating with them the night before is a coincidence. A response here, the day of, by the sounds of it. Klein transcript states that Klein was the last person to talk to Libby via her phone, Snapchat or some other app or media, via the Anthony Shots profile. She was also posting pictures of Abby on the bridge that day, which makes me pretty sure she was also chatting with people too. But I completely agree with you, there's no way this is a huge coincidence. So he might have been in communication with them mere hours or minutes before whatever happened. Mark Smith posted this, or actually Zoodle Nose posted this. Mark Smith responded, I've read Klein's 196-page interview transcript. He is protecting someone, and the police have an extremely strong feeling Anthony Shots was accessed at the same time on more than one device by more than one person based on metadata and the language differences from chat to chat. I have felt from the beginning that there are too many coincidences here with the proximity of the Keegan Kline initiated searches and the Richard Allen arrest. They have stumbled upon a massive pedophilia ring. Richard Allen brought the girls to someone else in the woods that day. There were souvenirs taken. I speculate, given the depravity of this ring, that there were pictures taken and shared post-mortem. Mark Smith responded, yes, I agree, and I've been saying this since the day of the first arrest press conference, but there's no way they would have made that big of a show of thanking the U.S. Marshal who interrogated Klein if it didn't mean anything. Nobody has a conceivable answer about that which doesn't involve Klein. Tony might be the answer. Zoodle Nose responded, I believe very little of what Keegan Kline had to say in that transcript, but what I did believe was that Tony is computer illiterate. Keegan does almost all of Tony's work-related tasks for his job at Chrysler because he barely knows how to use a computer. Yes, I do believe Tony has involvement, but I would not be shocked to learn that the other Anthony Shots user was actually Richard Allen. Allen's age lines up better with the age of the dad referred to in some of the predatory conversations. Richard Allen would have been 43 in 2016 when many of these conversations took place. 43 and 44 is the same age as the dad seeking pictures or Skype chats with the minors being catfished. Interesting. Norwegian Muse responded, I noticed that too. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to find out that all three of them used the account. Alright, let's move on to another piece of mind-shocking information. Jordan Sofer, Wabash, Indiana, went missing in May 2006, was found months later murdered in the woods. Richard Allen moved from Wabash County to Delphi, December 2006. So this possible connection, not with Allen, but with the Delphi case in general, was brought up years ago. 4 years ago, there was a post by I Love Tacos on the Delphi murder subreddit, thoughts on the connection, the Jordan Sofer homicide. Would be interested to hear everybody's opinion on a possible connection between the Delphi murders and the Jordan Sofer homicide. From my research, similarities are girls found near creek bank in a wooded area. Girls have similar facial features. Wabash/Peru, only an hour away from Delphi, possible drug-related influence. Her resemblance to Libby actually is a bit uncanny. TrueCaseFiles.com has a write-up on this disappearance and death of Jordan Sofer. Jordan Sofer had just recently turned 18 when she vanished May 23, 2006. The teen girl lived in Wabash, Indiana at the time of her disappearance. Jordan had spent most of her childhood in the foster system before she was adopted at the age of 16 by Robert and Linda Sofer. That same year, she dropped out of high school and later began working at a local Hardee's restaurant. However, during the spring of 2006, Jordan told her family members that she planned to re-enroll in high school so she could get a diploma. Before she had that opportunity, Jordan seemingly vanished without a trace. Months before her disappearance, Jordan moved out of her adoptive parents' home and had been staying with various relatives and friends in the Wabash area. She was staying with her friend and coworker, Erin Harlan, the weekend before her disappearance. The two reportedly last saw each other around 5:15 a.m., May 23, 2006, when Erin woke up to go to her morning shift at Hardee's. Jordan told Erin she was not working until later that day, so she stayed behind as Erin left for work. At a later point that morning, Jordan was dropped off at her adoptive parents' house in a truck driven by Corey Bridenthal. According to Jordan's father, Robert Sofer, she spoke briefly to him in the garage before leaving the house on foot. After walking away from the house, Jordan was never seen or heard from again. Later that evening, employees at Hardee's called the Sofers to inquire about Jordan's whereabouts as she had not shown up to her scheduled shift. This was very out of character for Jordan, so her parents immediately began to worry. They reported her missing the following day. Once police began to investigate, they questioned both Erin and Corey. Erin told police that Jordan was not at her house when she returned from her shift at Hardee's at 10:15 that morning. However, all of Jordan's belongings, including her purse, were left behind. Wait a second, so she left behind her purse and got dropped off at her adoptive parents' house? I mean, how many... Does she normally leave her purse? That's an interesting detail. Corey told police that Jordan had accidentally left her cell phone in his car when he dropped her off at her parents' house that morning. He later reportedly gave the cell phone to Erin so she could return it to Jordan. Okay, so this is a little strange. She left her purse and lost her cell phone? Or forgot her cell phone in this guy's truck. Again, how often does that happen? If that happened often, then okay, that's not that strange. If that had never happened before, okay, weird. The cell phone was later turned over to investigators, but unfortunately, it did not yield any clues. Police also questioned both Linda and Robert Sofer. Linda agreed to take a polygraph exam, which she passed, but Robert refused to take one. Many found this suspicious, but both Linda and Robert maintained that Robert took one of their foster children to the doctor shortly after Jordan left their house that morning. This is actually a little bit strange. Can anyone recall another case like this, a missing teen, where one parent, like out of a couple, one parent decided to take the poly, the other refused? Huh. I would think the majority of cases would involve both taking or both refusing, but... some people just don't believe in the polygraphs, and if they believe that the law enforcement are trying to stitch them up or something, or they're just completely incompetent, then they would refuse to take one. That's not necessarily suspicious, but, Jordan's case quickly grew cold. Years passed without any clues or trace of her whereabouts. Then, in May 2009, nearly 3 years after Jordan's disappearance, the case had a break. A mushroom hunter at a creek in Peru, Indiana, had spotted human remains amongst a thick canopy of raspberry bushes and honeysuckle. Dental records later confirmed that those remains belonged to Jordan Sofer. Due to the deterioration of the remains, an autopsy was unable to determine a cause of death, but police still began to investigate Jordan's death as homicide. It is believed that Jordan's body was in the spot where it was found ever since her disappearance. The clothes she was wearing that day were found amongst the remains. Years have passed since the discovery of Jordan's body, yet her murder remains unsolved. There has been very little information about the investigation, especially in more recent years. Still, anyone with info that could lead to Jordan's case being solved is encouraged to call 1-877-226-1026 to submit an anonymous tip. That is actually really bizarre. There really is not a lot of information here. So at this time, Richard Allen was living in Mexico, Indiana. Allegedly. This is weird. Anonymous posted this November 4th, 2022. I read in an online group that this case was solved. The murderer was her roommate's boyfriend who later committed suicide. I don't know if this is true, but that is what was stated. Okay, so is that just a rumor? Huh. Other posters discussing the similarity, because it's almost like she's got the hair of Libby and the face of Abby. And even though she was 18, she was 5'1" and looked a lot younger than 18. A post by Agent 847 on the Libby and Abby subreddit in regard to this case with some more details here. If these are accurate, this raises even more questions here. The reporting on this isn't solid. She lived in Peru and worked at Hardee's, which is about 7 blocks from the current Canal Street residence of the Kleins. It is unknown if they were living there back in 2006. But she was last seen by her adoptive father, Robert Sofer, at his home in Wabash. Her boyfriend dropped her off. She told Robert goodbye, and that's it. But it doesn't say how she left or with whom. She obviously didn't have a car, and she had to be at work that afternoon in Peru, which is 13-ish miles away from Wabash. One article mentions police having a POI, but no details. Her body was found near the banks of a river. Okay, this is such a problematic case. I mean, even if it has nothing to do with Delphi, I mean, it's so problematic because she leaves her purse with her roommate. Her boyfriend gives her a ride to her adoptive parents' home. She allegedly, according to the boyfriend, leaves her cell phone in the truck with the boyfriend, so she has no way of calling anybody. She talks to the dad in the garage and then just walks off. So she had to be at work 13 miles away, so presumably she's not going to walk 13 miles. So what did the parents have to say about that, the adoptive parents? Okay, so Full Awareness posted this. The person she left with left a confession note before he killed himself. That was the only way they solved this. So another poster is claiming it was already solved, and that it wasn't the roommate's boyfriend, it was her, or the person she left with left her roommate, or left the adoptive parents' home with someone else who wasn't her boyfriend. That's not clear there. Another detail here from an early article, September 22nd. This was posted on a forum, September 22nd, 2006. The article's not dated here. The Wabash Police Department is investigating the disappearance of Wabash resident Jordan A. Sofer, 18, who is believed to have friends in the Marion area. She was last seen the morning of May 23rd at 10:15 a.m. when she was dropped off at her adoptive parents' home by a friend. Sofer spoke briefly to her adopted father, Robert Sofer, gave him a hug, told him she loved him, and then left on foot. Jordan Sofer was previously from Peru and was known by the name of Arian Willis. She was adopted by Robert Sofer and his wife in Wabash about 4 years ago. Jordan Sofer is not wanted for any crime, and being 18 years old is not considered a runaway. Family, friends, and officers working on the case just want to hear from her and make sure she's alive and well. So this is kind of strange. So she no longer lives with her adoptive parents, so she just randomly got dropped off there and had a brief conversation with Robert Sofer, gave him a hug, told him she loved him, then left on foot. Does any of this make sense? This is kind of weird. Okay, so she only moved out the previous month. So, okay. One of the most detailed articles here is from FortWayne.com. Daughter Disappearance Brings Duel of Faith and Fear by Becky Manley. The Journal Gazette. The Christmas tree in the Sofer's Wabash home twinkles with white lights, and the decorations dangling from its branches include simple words such as dream, laugh, and love. But the words most often repeated on the tree branches, across the fireplace mantle, and in other spots throughout the Sofer house is believe. I guess my theme is believe this year, Linda Sofer said. For Sofer, that theme means to believe in God and to believe that her daughter, Jordan Sofer, is alive. Jordan Sofer, 18, was last seen May 23rd after a brief visit to her parents' home in downtown Wabash. When she left, she told her father, Robert Sofer, she loved him before walking down the alley behind the Sofer home. At some point after walking down the alley, Jordan Sofer disappeared, leaving behind her purse, her cell phone, and money in a savings account that has remained untouched. Wabash police have been trying to solve the mystery of what happened to Jordan Sofer since she was reported missing the day after she visited her parents' home. But the answer to that mystery remains stubbornly concealed, frustrating both police and the Sofers. Since her daughter disappeared, dread and fear have settled into Linda Sofer's heart, feelings she combats with her strong Christian faith. But there are times when a mother's worry overshadows everything, including the holiday season. Jordan Sofer had always helped her mother decorate their home. This year, working alone, it took Linda Sofer 3 days to put up the decorations. It should have been a joyful time, but for this year, Linda Sofer, it was 3 days of inviting reminders of her missing daughter into her mind. I cried for 3 straight days, she said. Robert and Linda Sofer had been fostering children for about 2 years when the girl who would eventually become their daughter arrived on their doorstep. At that time, she bore a different name, Arian Willis. And despite the temporary signs of an unhealthy lifestyle, her features bore a striking resemblance to Linda Sofer's. A new beginning. When Arian Willis arrived on the Sofer's doorstep in October 2002, she was 14, wore ill-fitting clothes, her face covered with acne, and her shoulder-length reddish-brown hair dry. Arian was put in foster care after she was removed from an abusive home in Peru. She arrived at the Sofer home uncertain, untrusting, and fearful. Sofer recalls many nights when Arin woke up screaming from nightmares. She was just petrified. Eventually, the Sofers gained the young girl's trust through a consistent day-to-day routine, Linda Sofer said. In May 2004, Jordan wrote a Mother's Day letter to Linda Sofer. In it, she stated she loved Robert and Linda and wanted to be a permanent part of their family. Jordan's request to be adopted by the Sofers prompted prayer from Linda Sofer. During her prayers, Sofer said she felt peace. After all, why would God send her a child who looked just like her and who needed a family? And the two had forged a bond that could only be described as mother-daughter. The adoption was final in August 2004. To mark the new beginning, Arian Willis changed her name to Jordan Arin Sofer. Even though I didn't have Jordan as a child, it's hard to remember her not being here, Sofer said. In addition to her new name, Jordan Sofer had a new family and a new life, but she was still a teenager and prone to emotional outbursts common to children that age. Earlier this year, Linda Sofer said she confronted her daughter over a journal entry she had made about a relationship. The two argued. Jordan Sofer insisted she was 18, an adult, and couldn't be told what to do. After the confrontation, Jordan Sofer moved out. Linda Sofer said she and her husband believed their daughter would have one wild summer and then she would return to their home in August. But long before that hoped-for reunion, Jordan Sofer disappeared, leaving her parents and police at a loss to describe what happened to her. On the day Jordan Sofer disappeared, she stopped by the Sofer home, planning to go on a motorcycle ride with Robert Sofer. However, her father told her he wouldn't be able to go on that ride because he had to get one of the foster children ready for a doctor's visit. Jordan Sofer understood, Linda Sofer said. As Jordan left the Sofer home that day, she told Robert she loved him and slipped out of sight, walking down the alley behind the Sofer's home. Okay, so the first thoughts regarding that here is, we only have Robert Sofer's word on that. How do we know they didn't have an argument and he just didn't want the police to know that they had an argument? And if she's expecting a somewhat, who knows how long the motorcycle ride would be, but would the motorcycle ride result in him dropping her back off at her and her roommate's place? And what are the logistics there? How is she getting back? What does Robert have to say about that? We need more information here because, it's just weird. That night, Linda Sofer received a call from Hardee's where her daughter had worked for about a year. Although Jordan Sofer was scheduled that night, she didn't report to work. On May 24th, Linda Sofer called the police telling them it wasn't like her daughter to not show up for work. The police took a report. The search for Jordan Sofer had begun. Hear, speak, see no evil. Jordan Sofer's black and gray cell phone sat on the window ledge of the Wabash Police Department, stubbornly silent for months. Then one day, months after the phone's owner had disappeared, it rang. I almost jumped out of my seat when it rang, Detective Scott Long said. Police had bought time for the prepaid phone, hoping it might someday ring and provide a clue that might help solve the mystery they had grappled with for months. The police had given much time to the mystery, losing sleep in hope of finding answers. These cases kind of consume you, Long said. The day the cell phone's stubborn silence was broken, there would still be no answer. The caller had misdialed, Long said. At this point in the investigation, police had already interviewed everybody Jordan Sofer had contact with, many more than once, Long said. They had also administered polygraph tests, which were passed. In September, 2 investigators from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children came to Wabash and reviewed the information police had gathered, Long said. The review unearthed no new details. Joanne Donnellan, spokesperson for the center, said Wabash police asked for the center's help with the case. The center posted Jordan Sofer's photo on its website. Donnellan said 1 out of 6 missing persons is found through the photo distribution network. She's been missing since May, but we really need to remind the community, especially around the holidays, that she's still missing and they have the power to try and bring her home, Donnellan said. The center continues to help Wabash and the case, Donnellan said. The entire thing that doesn't make sense is no 18-year-old girl is going to go anywhere without her purse or her cellular phone, Long said. Although Jordan Sofer seemed to want independence, she had also made plans for the future, Long said. Before she disappeared, Jordan Sofer, who had been a student at a private Christian school, had talked to a guidance counselor at Wabash High School about finishing her senior year of high school. I think that was important to her, Long said. Jordan Sofer had also made a journal entry about a possible career in the Coast Guard. The rest of Jordan Sofer's belongings remain in a laundry basket in Long's office. They include an olive green canvas purse with a rainbow striped interior. Inside the purse is Jordan Sofer's work schedule written on a scrap of paper, her learner's driving permit, and a digital camera. There's also a pink nylon wallet with 3 monkeys in familiar poses, 1 monkey with its hands over its ears, a second with its hands over its mouth, and a third with its hands over its eyes. Hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Although he hopes otherwise, Long said it's hard to believe Jordan Sofer is still alive. All he wants is to provide answers for her family. Having kids of my own, I can't imagine what it would be like to not know where my kids are at, he said. Ministry for children. After her daughter disappeared, Linda Sofer said much of her time was consumed taking care of the foster children in her home. However, in those moments when she was alone, the doubt and worry and fear would creep into her mind and heart. Then, in June, the foster children were removed from the Sofers' home, with officials saying they were giving the Sofers a respite. I didn't need those kids taken out of my home, Linda Sofer said. Those kids were keeping me on track. The problem, Linda Sofer said, is that she and her husband were asked to take polygraph tests. Linda Sofer took one and passed, she said. Her husband has refused the test. Robert Sofer, who declined to be interviewed, was so affected by his daughter's disappearance that he had to go on sick leave, Linda Sofer said. On the day their daughter disappeared, her husband was busy taking care of the young foster child who had to go to the doctor, said Linda Sofer, who was at church that day. Their time was easily accounted for, making it difficult for Linda Sofer to understand why they were asked to take the tests, which are controversial and often ruled not admissible in court. We wouldn't harm a kid for nothing, she said. Linda Sofer said she was compelled to care for foster children because she believes kids are her ministry. Since she and Robert began offering foster homes, they have cared for about 20 children, taking in 5 children at a time. Dee Gibson, executive director for White's Residential and Family Services in Wabash, emphasized that the decision to remove the foster children was made with the Sofers' best interests in mind. They were removed for the benefit of the Sofers, Gibson said. This has been a difficult time for them. Gibson said the Sofers have not been implicated in their daughter's disappearance. Now, 5 empty stockings hang above the Sofers' fireplace. Linda Sofer said the stockings represent the 5 foster children who won't get anything for Christmas. It's been many, many years since we haven't had any kids in our home, she said. I feel useless. I just pray. Since Jordan Sofer disappeared, Linda Sofer has found sometimes more difficult than others. There was the day last spring when Jordan's biological sister graduated from high school, a ceremony Linda Sofer knew her daughter wouldn't miss. Linda Sofer kept her eyes on the doors, waiting for her daughter to arrive, but Jordan Sofer never walked through those doors. With fall came hunting season, another difficult time for Linda Sofer. I dreaded to see fall come because I'm afraid someone's going to go hunting and find her. Then came the holidays. I just wish Christmas would go away, said Linda Sofer, who doesn't want to believe anything bad has happened to her daughter. I need peace, Linda Sofer said. I just pray that she walks in the door someday. So it's interesting. Robert Sofer declined the polygraph and also declined interviews, while his wife did not. On Miami County Life, there's another interesting article here. This was posted Wednesday, June 7, 2006 by Sheila Rhodes. 18-year-old still missing. Wabash police still have not located a Wabash woman missing since May 23rd, but recent rumors have caused authorities to receive some troublesome phone calls. Jordan A. Sofer, 18, reportedly went missing on May 23rd after speaking briefly with her father at his home in Wabash, according to Wabash Police Detective Captain Scott Long. But some local gossip would have some believing she had been found. Apparently, there has been some talk around town that she was found behind Max Tan, Long explained. There was a reported gas leak there last week, and Max Tan, A to C Tobacco, and Northside Carryout were evacuated. There were police cars on scene, so someone decided that Jordan had been found behind Max Tan. The three businesses are located on Cass Street. Long said these kinds of rumors are hurtful and can only delay the investigation. He added that a relative of Sofer's had actually been called by a well-meaning friend and told that her body had been found, which prompted the relative to call the police station. That's too bad, Long said. The family has posted signs of Jordan all over, and one business even took the signs down because they thought the rumor was true. The search for Sofer, however, continues. We are still getting various tips, and we are following up every lead we get, Long said. Originally from Peru, Sofer, formerly known as Erin Willis, was adopted by her foster parents, Robert and Linda Sofer, who live in Wabash. Around the 1st of April, Jordan Sofer moved out of the residence and in with the Glenn McClymonds family on Sivey Street. On May 21st, she left the McClymonds home to stay with a friend, Aaron Harlan, whom she works with at Hardee's. According to Long, the Sofers reported to police on May 24th that their daughter had gone missing. Okay, that's actually an even bigger problem, though. Because, around the 1st of April, she moves out of her foster parents, which she had been living with however many years, a few years. She moved in with this other family. There's no connection stated here. So she lived with that family for over a month, almost 2 months. May 21st, she moves, or she left the McClymonds home to stay with a friend. So is that not a permanent move? She's only staying there for 2-3 days before she goes missing. So she only stayed there 2 or 3 nights. I mean, that's kind of weird. And then she goes missing. I mean, that's kind of unusual. Is that all coincidental? I mean, all this moving in the 2 months prior to her going missing. It also states in this article that Corey Bridenthal, it doesn't say that he's her boyfriend here. It just says that, according to Robert Sofer, she arrived at his home pulling up in a truck driven by Corey Bridenthal, who dropped her off and left. Bridenthal was later questioned and told police that after he dropped her off, he noticed that Sofer's cell phone was laying on a seat, so he returned it. The exact method he used was unclear, but the phone was either given to Harlan at work or taken to her apartment. The plane dealer had learned that a few days later, Bridenthal was picked up on a warrant for an alleged parole violation. He remains in custody at Wabash County Jail. Wow. So within a few days of her disappearance, her either boyfriend or whoever, this guy that dropped her off, gave her a ride the morning of her disappearance, is already in jail for a parole violation, an alleged parole. It says alleged parole violation, but that he's in custody at Wabash County Jail. What does everybody make of that? I mean, that's kind of weird. That's definitely kind of weird. So yeah, the timing there, it's kind of hard to ignore that timing, but... So yeah, I mean, a lot of potential connections everywhere, but of course, I mean, justice and closure deserving for all, regardless of whether it was the same perpetrator in these 2 cases, regardless of whether these 2 cases are linked or not. But plenty more to come in the Delphi case series as more information becomes available. There's actually still quite a bit of information to go over from before, which I will be covering in upcoming episodes. I mean, there's a lot here in this case. So, hope everybody found another edition of Mindshock True Crime interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal, or you can become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Delphi Case Series. This is episode 48, Unsealed. We will be looking at the probable cause affidavit and the implications contained therein. What it all means regarding Richard Allen, what it all means for the case, what it all means for potential co-conspirators or co-perpetrators in this crime. And that's even if Allen himself was involved, which some people believe he was not. He's being set up as some kind of patsy, either as part of a criminal ring where he was involved with other criminal activities, or as not even that, and that he really isn't involved in any type of criminal activity. There's all sorts of beliefs out there, but here on Mindshock, as the motto goes, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. So all we can do is logically examine every piece of evidence and logically examine every single theory for veracity. As always, if you find the Mindshock podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can also become a member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topological analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Okay, so let's go through this probable cause affidavit that is released. Indy Star posted this on their website. Obviously, it's been posted in many places. This is November 29th, 2022. Court documents released in Delphi murder case. An ejected 40 cal shell was found near one of the victim's bodies. Ties suspect Richard Allen to the 2017 killings of Delphi teens Libby German or Abby Williams. It should be and, I guess it's a typo here on Indy Star. According to the probable cause affidavit released Tuesday, the tool marks on the shell match a pistol owned by Allen, according to the affidavit, which had some redactions. In an interview with police, Allen said he never let anyone borrow or use his pistol, according to the affidavit. Allen had no explanation how a shell ejected from his sidearm was found at the scene of the crime, according to the affidavit. The affidavit indicates it has 8 pages, but only 7 were released Tuesday. Read the probable cause affidavit here. So we're going to look at it. But again, if he was just shooting his gun in the woods, I mean, how sloppy would someone have to be to leave that shell? Or walk muddy and bloody, as what will be stated here? None of this really makes any sense. I mean, you would think things would start making sense with document released, but it still doesn't really make sense. But let's look at this. State of Indiana, Carroll County. Probable cause affidavit. I, the undersigned affiant, submit the following information pursuant to IC 35-33-7-2 as a sworn affidavit setting forth the facts and circumstances known to law enforcement of Carroll County as the basis for probable cause to arrest without a warrant or to establish probable cause for issuance of an arrest warrant for the above-named defendant, Richard Allen. That the facts and circumstances described below would be sufficient basis for a person of reasonable caution and prudence to believe that the accused has committed or attempted to commit the offense or offenses described, and that if arrest without a warrant would be authorized under IC 35-33-1-1. That the hearsay statements of witnesses contained herein are considered reliable and credible due to the witness's personal knowledge and or are corroborated by the totality of the circumstances. That on February 14th, 2017, victim 1 and 2 were found deceased in the woods approximately 0.2 miles northeast of the Monon High Bridge in Carroll County. Their bodies were located on the north side of the Deer Creek. At the time, the Monon High Bridge Trail was approximately 1 mile gravel trail terminating at the Monon High Bridge. The Monon High Bridge is an abandoned railroad trestle, approximately 0.25 miles long, spanning the Deer Creek and Deer Creek Valley on the southeast end of the trail. Approximately 0.7 miles northwest on the trail from the northwestern edge of the Monon High Bridge is the Freedom Bridge, which is a pedestrian bridge spanning State Road 25. Approximately 350 feet west of Freedom Bridge was a former railroad overpass over Old State Road 25, also known as County Road 300 North. The trail terminates just west of the former railroad overpass. The majority of the trail is in a wooded area with a steep embankment on the south side of the trail. The entirety of the trail and the location of the girls' bodies were and are located in Carroll County, Indiana. Through interviews, reviews of electronic records, and review of video at the Hoosier Harvester, investigators believe victim 1 and 2 were dropped off across from the Mears farm at 1:49 p.m. on February 13, 2017, by Redacted. The Mears farm is located on the north side of County Road 300 North near an entrance to the trails. A video from victim 2's phone shows that at 2:13 p.m., victim 1 and victim 2 encountered a male subject on the southeast portion of the Mononhigh Bridge. The male ordered the girls, quote, guys down the hill, end quote. No witnesses saw them after this time. No outgoing communications were found on victim 2's phone after this time. Their bodies were discovered February 14, 2017. The video recovered from victim 2's phone shows victim 1 walking southeast on the Mononhigh Bridge while a male subject wearing a dark jacket and jeans walks behind her. As the male subject approaches victim 1 and 2, one of the victims mentions gun. Near the end of the video, a male is seen and heard telling the girls, guys down the hill. The girls then begin to proceed down the hill and the video ends. A still photograph taken from the video and the guys down the hill audio was subsequently released to the public to assist investigators in identifying the male. Victim 1 and victim 2's deaths were ruled as homicides. Clothes were found in the Deer Creek belonging to victim 1 and 2 south of where their bodies were located. Now again, let's keep in mind, I bring this up all the time, both sides of the creek were searched according to searchers. And even a heat-seeking drone, a thermal imaging drone, was flown that first afternoon, the day before their bodies were discovered. So not only were there no heat signatures, where there would have been because it was only a couple hours, and sometimes even heat dissipation, it takes a couple hours to even start the heat dissipation, so the bodies could be almost as warm as when alive for up to a certain amount of time. You can check out the podcast. I read directly from scientific literature and the actual basis for which all time of death estimates are established from. But apparently nobody saw the clothes in the creek either. That's kind of weird if it was there the whole time. Very, very weird. But let's continue here. There was also a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from victim 2's body, between victim 1 and victim 2's bodies. The round was unspent and had extraction marks on it. Interviews were conducted with 3 juveniles, redacted. They advised that they were on the Mononhigh Bridge Trail on February 13, 2017. They advised they were walking on the trail towards Freedom Bridge to go home when they encountered a male walking from Freedom Bridge toward the Mononhigh Bridge. Redacted described the male as kind of creepy and advised he was wearing like blue jeans, like really light blue jacket, and his hair was gray, maybe a little brown, and he did not really show his face. She advised the jacket was a duck canvas type jacket. Redacted advised she said hi to the male, but he just glared at them. She recalled him being in all black and had something covering his mouth. She described him as not very tall, with a bigger build. She said he was not bigger than 5'10". Redacted advised he was wearing a black hoodie, black jeans, and black boots. She stated he had his hands in his pockets. Redacted showed investigators photographs she took on her phone while she was on the trail that day. The photographs included a photo of the Mononhigh Bridge taken at 12:43 p.m. and another one taken at 1:26 p.m. of the bench east of the Freedom Bridge. Redacted advised after she took the photo of the bench, they started walking back towards the Freedom Bridge. She advised that was when they encountered the man who matched the description of the photograph taken from victim 2's video. Redacted described the man she encountered on the trail as wearing a blue or black windbreaker jacket. She advised the jacket had a collar and that he had his hood up from the clothing underneath his jacket. She advised he was wearing baggy jeans and was taller than her. She advised her head came up to approximately his shoulder. She advised Redacted said hi to the man and that he said nothing back. She stated he was walking with a purpose, like he knew where he was going. She stated he had his hands in his pockets and kept his head down. She advised she did not get a good look at his face, but believed him to be a white male. The girls advised after encountering the male, they continued their walk across Freedom Bridge and the old railroad bridge over Old State Route 25. Investigators spoke with Redacted, who advised she was on the trails February 13, 2017. Video from the Hoosier Harvest Store captured Redacted's vehicle traveling eastbound at 1:46 p.m. toward the entrance across from the Mears farm. Redacted advised she saw 4 juvenile females walking on the bridge over Old State Road 25 as she was driving underneath on her way to park. Redacted advised there were no other cars parked across from the Mears farm where she parked. She advised she walked to the Monon High Bridge and observed a male matching the one from the victim two's video. She described the male she saw as a white male wearing blue jeans and a blue jacket. She advised he was standing on the first platform of the Monon High Bridge, approximately 50 feet from her. She advised she turned around at the bridge and continued her walk. She advised approximately halfway between the bridge and the parking area across from the Mears farm, she passed two girls walking toward the Monon High Bridge. She advised she believed the girls were victims 1 and 2. Video from the Hoosier Harvester shows at 1:49 p.m. a white car matching Redacted's vehicle traveling away from the entrance across from the Mears farm. Redacted advised she finished her walk and saw no other adults other than the male on the bridge. Her vehicle is seen on the Hoosier Harvester video at 2:14 p.m., leaving westbound from the trails. Redacted advised that when she was leaving, she noted a vehicle was parked in an odd manner at the Child Protective Services building. She said it was not odd for vehicles to be parked there, but she noticed it was odd because of the manner it was parked, backed in near the building. Investigators received a tip from Redacted in which he stated he was on his way to Delphi on State Road 25 around 2:10 p.m. on February 13, 2017. He observed a purple PT Cruiser, or a small SUV-type vehicle parked on the south side of the old CPS building. He stated it appeared as though it was backed in to conceal the license plate of the vehicle. Redacted both drew diagrams of where they saw the vehicle parked, and their diagrams generally matched as to the area the vehicle was parked and the manner in which it was parked. Redacted advised he remembered seeing a smaller dark-colored car parked at the old CPS building. He described it as possibly being a smart car. Redacted's vehicle was seen leaving at 2:28 p.m. on the Hoosier Harvester video. Investigators spoke with Redacted, who stated she was traveling east on 300 North on February 13, 2022, and observed a male subject walking west on the north side of 300 North away from the Monon High Bridge. Redacted advised that the male subject was wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. She further stated that it appeared he had gotten into a fight. Investigators were able to determine from watching the video from the Hoosier Harvester that Redacted was traveling on CR 300 North at approximately 3:57 p.m. Through interviews, electronic data, photographs, and video from the Hoosier Harvester, investigators determined that there were other people on the trail that day after 2:13 p.m. Those people were interviewed, and none of those individuals encountered the male subject referenced above, witnessed by the juvenile girls, Redacted and Redacted. Further, none of those individuals witnessed Victim 1 and Victim 2. Investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who interviewed Richard Allen in 2017. That narrative stated, Mr. Allen was on the trail between 1:30 and 3:30. He parked at the old Farm Bureau building and walked to the new Freedom Bridge. While at the Freedom Bridge, he saw 3 females. He noted one was taller and had brown or black hair. He did not remember description, nor did he speak with them. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. He stated that there were vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead, however, did not pay attention to them. He did not take any photos or video. His cell phone did not list an IMEI, but did have the following. Potential follow-up information. Who were the 3 girls walking in the area of the Freedom Bridge? Investigators believe Mr. Allen was referring to the old Child Protective Services building there and was not a Farm Bureau building in the area, nor had there been. Investigators believe the females he saw included Redacted and Redacted due to the time that they were leaving the trail, the time he reported getting to the trail, and the descriptions the 3 females gave. Investigators discovered Richard Allen owned 2 vehicles in 2017. A 2016 black Ford Focus and a 2006 gray Ford 500. Investigators observed a vehicle that resembled Allen's 2016 Ford Focus on the Hoosier Harvester video at 1:27 p.m., traveling westbound on CR 300 North in front of the Hoosier Harvester, which coincided with a statement that he arrived around 1:30 p.m. at the trails. Investigators note witnesses described the vehicle parked at the former Child Protective Services building as a PT Cruiser, small SUV, or smart car. Investigators believe those descriptions are similar in nature to a 2016 Ford Focus. And a quick aside here, again, just to reiterate, some people online are speculating that Tony Klein's mother has a purple PT Cruiser. Not to be confused with Keegan who supposedly had no vehicles and did not drive. In October 13th, 2022, Richard Allen was interviewed again by investigators. He advised he was on the trails February 13, 2017. He stated he saw juvenile girls on the trails east of the Freedom Bridge and that he went onto the Monon High Bridge. Richard Allen further stated he went out onto the Monon High Bridge to watch the fish. Later in his statements, he said he walked out to the first platform on the bridge. He stated he then walked back, sat on a bench on the trail, and then left. He stated he parked his car on the side of an old building. He told investigators that he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. So he didn't even know if he had a blue or black jacket on himself. Interesting. He advised he may have been wearing some type of head covering as well. He further claimed he saw no one else except for the juvenile girls he saw east of the Freedom Bridge. He told investigators that he owns firearms and that they are at his home. Richard M. Allen's wife, Kathy Allen, also spoke to investigators. She confirmed that Richard did have guns and knives at his residence. She also stated that Richard still owns a blue Carhartt jacket. October 13th, 2022, investigators executed a search warrant of Richard Allen's residence. Among other items, officers located jackets, boots, knives, and firearms, including a Sig Sauer model P226, 40 cal pistol with serial number U625627. Between October 14, 2022 and October 19, 2022, the Indiana State Police Laboratory performed an analysis on Allen's Sig Sauer model P226. The laboratory performed a physical examination and classification of the firearm, function test, barrel and overall length measurement, test firing, ammunition component characterization, microscope comparison, and NIBIN. The laboratory determined that the unspent round located within 2 feet of victim 2's body had been cycled through Richard Allen's Sig Sauer model P226. The laboratory remarked, "An identification opinion is reached when the evidence exhibits an agreement of class characteristics and a sufficient agreement of individual marks. Sufficient agreement is related to the significant duplication of random, striated, impressed marks as evidenced by the correspondence of a pattern or combination of patterns of surface contours. The interpretation of identification is subjective in nature and based on relevant scientific research and the reporting examiner's training and experience." Investigators then ran the firearm and found that the firearm was purchased by Richard Allen in 2001. Richard Allen voluntarily came to the Indiana State Police Post on October 26, 2022. He spoke with investigators and stated that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow the Sig Sauer model P226 firearm. When asked about the unspent bullet, he did not have an explanation of why the bullet was found between the bodies of Victim 1 and Victim 2. He again admitted that he was on the trail, but denied knowing Victim 1 or 2 and denied any involvement in their murders. Carroll County Sheriff's Department Detective Redacted has been part of the investigation since it started in 2017. He had an opportunity to review and examine evidence gathered in this investigation. Detective Redacted, along with other investigators, believe the evidence gathered shows that Richard Allen is the male subject seen on the video from Victim 2's phone who forced the victims down the hill. Further, that the victims were forced down the hill by Richard Allen and led to the location where they were murdered. Through the statements and photographs of the juvenile females and the statement of Redacted and Redacted, who were at the southeast edge of the trail at 12:43 p.m., east of the Freedom Bridge at 1:26 p.m., and walked across the former railroad overpass over Old State Road 25 after 1:26 p.m. and before 1:46 p.m. They walked the entirety of the trail and observed only one person, an adult male. Redacted's vehicle is seen on the Hoosier Harvester video at 1:46 p.m. and leaving at 2:14 p.m., and she stated she only saw one adult male. Redacted and Redacted described the male in similar manners, wearing similar clothing, leading investigators to believe that all four saw the same male individual. Investigators believe that the male observed by Redacted and Redacted is the same male depicted in the video from Victim 2's phone due to the descriptions of the male by the four females matching the male in the video. Furthermore, Victim 2's video was taken at 2:13 p.m. and Redacted saw only one male while she was on the trail from approximately 1:46 p.m. to 2:14 p.m. Investigators believe Richard Allen was the male seen by Redacted and Redacted and the male seen in Victim 2's video. Richard Allen told investigators he was on the trail from 1:30 to 3:30 that day. Video from the Hoosier Harvester shows a vehicle that matches the description of Richard Allen's vehicle passing at 1:27 p.m. towards the former CPS building. The clothing he told investigators he was wearing matched the clothing of the male in Victim 2's video and the clothing descriptions provided by Redacted and Redacted. A vehicle matching the description of his 2016 Ford Focus is seen at around 2:10 p.m., 2:14 p.m., and 2:28 p.m. at the former CPS building. Through his own admissions, Richard Allen walked the trails and eventually hiked to the Monon High Bridge and walked out onto the Monon High Bridge. A male subject matching Richard Allen's description was not seen on the trail after 2:13 p.m. Investigators identified other individuals on the trails, or CR 300 North, between 2:30 p.m. and 4:11 p.m. None of these individuals saw a male subject matching the description of Richard Allen on the trail. Furthermore, Richard Allen stated that he only saw 3 girls on the trail who investigators believe to be redacted. Investigators believe Richard Allen was not seen on the trail after 2:13 p.m. because he was in the woods with victim 1 and 2. An unspent 40 cal round between the bodies of victim 1 and 2 was forensically determined to have been cycled through Richard Allen's 6-hour model P226. The 6-hour model P226 was found at Richard Allen's residence, and he admitted to owning it. Investigators were able to determine that he had owned it since 2001. Richard Allen stated he had not been on that property where the unspent round was found, that he did not know the property owner, and that he had no explanation as to why a round cycled through his firearm would be at that location. Furthermore, he stated that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow the 6-hour model P226. Investigators believe that after the victims were murdered, Richard Allen returned to his vehicle by walking down CR 300 North. Investigators believe he was seen by Redacted walking back to his vehicle on CR 300 North with clothes that were muddy and bloody. Redacted, along with investigators, believe the statements made by the witnesses because the statements corroborate the timeline of the death of the 2 victims as well as coincide with the admissions made by Richard Allen. Further, the accounts relayed by Redacted and Redacted are similar in nature, and timestamps on the photographs taken by Redacted correspond to the times the juvenile females said they were on the trail and saw the male individual. Okay, so there we have it. Now let's look at a summary of this timeline. We'll go to Reddit for this. So let's look at the timeline laid out here in the probable cause affidavit. Now, is there really anything that damning in this, and why did they want it to remain sealed? Supposedly there are underage witnesses, which is fine. You redact the names. I mean, it's kind of weird how they just wanted this thing sealed. But let's look at it. On the Delphi murders subreddit, Important Rope actually laid this out really well here in a very concise fashion. I've seen some complaints about the PCA being weak evidence. It really isn't once you start to lay it out and put it together. People want to hand wave and dismiss eyewitness accounts as unreliable, but they become a lot more reliable once you have digital evidence, photos with timestamps. Although, again, is that timestamp on when it was put on Snapchat as opposed to when it was taken? Video, surveillance cameras, and Richard Allen's own testimony to back them up. The timeline as laid out in the PCA goes like this. At 12:43, 3 juvenile witnesses take a photo of the High Bridge. At 1:26, the juvenile witnesses take a photo of the bench east of the Freedom Bridge. 1:27, a vehicle resembling Richard Allen's 2016 Ford Focus is seen on the Hoosier Harvester video, traveling westbound towards the old CPS building. 1:30, Richard Allen says he parked at the old Farm Bureau building. There is no old Farm Bureau building and never was, so this is believed to be the old CPS building. 1:37 approximately. After taking the bench photo, the juvenile witnesses encounter a king of creepy male walking on the trail as they head towards the Freedom Bridge to go home. Time is estimated by when the girls are later seen by witness 4, whose car is on camera at 1:46, and by the time given in Richard Allen's statement about when he arrived and the video showing a car matching his Ford Focus arriving. Witness 1 describes him wearing a really light blue jacket and his hair was gray and a little brown. Didn't really show his face. Let me repeat that part again. Didn't really show his face. Jacket was a duck canvas type jacket and didn't really show his face. Witness 2 describes him as wearing all black and had something covering his mouth. He said he was not very tall and had a bigger build, not bigger than 5'10". Witness 3 says he was wearing a black hoodie, black jeans, and black boots and had his hands in his pockets. Interesting. So all three witnesses have a different description, which is kind of weird. Unknown which of the three took the bench photo, but she goes on to say the man they encountered matched the description of the man in the video from the victim's video. Described the man as wearing a blue or black windbreaker jacket with his hood up from the clothing underneath his jacket. Advised he was wearing baggy blue jeans and was taller than her. Said he was walking with a purpose and had his hands in his pocket and kept his head down. Did not get a good look at his face. So apparently nobody saw his face here. They meet no one else on the trail, just one adult male. Richard Allen admits to meeting 3 juveniles on the trail, says he met no one else, says he was looking down watching a stock ticket on his phone. 146, witness 4's car, apparently an adult woman, is shown on the Hoosier Harvester security camera traveling eastbound towards the entrance from the Mears farm. Said she saw 4 juvenile females walking across the bridge over Old State Road 25. No other cars were parked across from the Mears farm where she parked. 149. Abby and Libby are dropped off at the Mears farm near an entrance to the trails. This is confirmed by the white car that dropped them off being caught on the Hoosier Harvester camera. I don't know about confirmed. Backed up. 152, witness 4 walked to the high bridge, estimated 6-minute walk, and observed a male matching the description of the man in the victim's video. Described him as a white male wearing blue jeans and a blue jean jacket. She said he was on the first platform of the high bridge, approximately 50 feet from her. She turned around and continued her walk. Says she only met one adult male on her walk. Investigators believe this to be the same male the juveniles encountered. Also believe it to be the man in the victim's video. The thing that's weird here, I mean, there's just a handful, there's just a couple of these people and that's it. What happened to the dozens and dozens of people walking the trail on this unusually warm day in the middle of the day? That doesn't really match earlier reports. Unless those were all wrong as well. I mean, I don't know. Richard Allen admits he went onto the high bridge to watch the fish. Says he walked out to the first platform, then walked back, sat on a bench on the trail, and then left. He told investigators he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. He advised he may have been wearing some type of head covering as well. Roughly between 1:40 and 2:10, we know Richard Allen arrived around 1:30 and would have had to walk to the bridge. Richard Allen claims he has spent some time sitting on a bench on the trail. Witness 4 is seen leaving on camera at 2:14, and she saw a man matching Richard Allen's description on the bridge when she walked to it. 155, witness 4 says about halfway between the bridge and the parking area, she passes 2 girls walking towards the high bridge. She believed they were Abby and Libby. So in the past, people have speculated why nobody saw them. So we have one witness here that potentially saw them. 155. Estimated time as halfway between bridge and parking area. At 2:10, witness 5 says he saw a purple PT Cruiser or small SUV type vehicle parked on the south side of the old CPS building. Appeared it was backed in to conceal the license plate. Now, here's an interesting point. Some people are speculating online that Tony Klein, his mother, has a purple PT Cruiser. That's speculation only online. I don't know if anybody's verified that. Again, this is Mindshock. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. There's no shortage of triggered goofs who are hallucinating that I am claiming something is true or untrue. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. This is all just a logical examination of many theories. 2 witnesses, 5 and question mark, could be 4, not sure, drew diagrams generally matching the area and manner the vehicle was parked. Witness 6 advised he remembered seeing a dark-colored car parked at the old CPS building, describes it as possibly being a smart car. Witness 6 vehicle is seen leaving on Hoosier Harvester video at 2:28. 2:13, Abby and Libby encounter bridge guy, allegedly. Abby and Libby will not be seen alive again. 2:14, witness 4's vehicle is shown on the security camera footage leaving westbound from the trails. I mean, how coincidental that everybody's just magically leaving at the time this is going down. I mean, that's kind of weird. Also, whether this was planned or not planned. I mean, if let's say the juveniles or other people just happened to be walking around on the bridge, like, what is the plan for this abduction? Like, how does this all play out? It's just kind of weird. It's an unusually warm day. So even if there wasn't going to be a lot of people there might be an expectation. Nice warm day. Might be people out on the trails. So the whole thing still is just doesn't make a lot of sense. So 2:14, witness 4's vehicle is shown in the security camera footage leaving westbound from the trails. She notes she sees a vehicle parked in an odd manner at the old CPS building. Witness 4 walked the trail, turned around at the bridge, and left in about 30 minutes. So the exact time that something's about to go down, she's leaving. 2:30 to 4:11, investigators identify other individuals on the trails or CR 300 North. None of these individuals saw a male subject matching the description of Richard Allen or bridge guy. At 3:30, Richard Allen says he left the trail. So that's interesting because there's other individuals who are on the trails and on the road. None of them saw him. 3:57, witness 7. So that's at the 3:57 p.m. Witness 7 advises that she was traveling east on 300 North and observed a male subject walking west away from the high bridge. He was wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. Appeared he had been in a fight. So this is perhaps the smoking gun people are looking for. Because this is damning. I mean, this is crazy. This is huge. Now, obviously, we don't have any kind of facial feature identification. But what's strange is between 2:30 and 4:11, nobody saw this guy, other than witness 7 who was traveling east on 300 North. But investigators clearly state they did find people walking the trails at that time. They just happened not to see him. Okay. So continuing the post here, this doesn't even get to the unspent round that a lot of people have been critical of, but once you start looking at the timeline and Richard Allen's own words, the picture starts to become clear. Some additional notes: times that are estimates are indicated as such. They are estimates based on linear walking and thus could be off a bit in either direction. If you're stopping to take photos, etc., it could take longer. The trail is about a mile long. Richard Allen admits to being there for 2 hours, but only seeing the 3 juveniles. What was he doing and where was he that time? No witnesses see him after witness 4 sees him on the trail sometime after 1:46, unless you count the person who sees the bloody muddy guy at 3:57. There's serious missing time in his story. Not just his story, but what about all these other people on the trails? They don't see the guy? And what is Richard, if this is Richard Allen or a bridge guy, whoever, like, what is he thinking just randomly walking around muddy and bloody? And how come only one person saw that? The area that Richard Allen claims to have waited on a bench for a while is a straight shot up and down the trail. He could see if anybody was coming and where Abby and Libby were on the bridge. Okay, but what about the other side of the bridge? What about the trails underneath? What about the hangout spot by the bridge? I mean, it's all really weird. Like, what expectation is there that this guy could get away with this? If it's only one guy and if it did happen in this time frame as alleged. Okay, so let's go over a few more posts here in discussion regarding this affidavit. Palebot posted this, also on the Delphi murder subreddit here. I can't seem to wrap my head around the fact that virtually everything in the probable cause could have been determined within days of the crime. That's some crazy level incompetence. Am I missing something? I mean, you have a murder, a dude on a cell cam, and 4 or so witnesses about the dude, and the dude in the flesh came forward who not only matches but stated that he was the man the witnesses saw. His timeline matches the witnesses and the crime window. Store cams saw his car. Did Allen panic and put him at the scene through some irrational sense he could explain himself away? Clearly worked, WTF, but he probably could not have imagined this insane level of incompetence. If he's guilty, what other kinds of erratic things I wonder he did within the weeks after the murder? Am I wrong to think an arrest could have happened within days based on the most basic evidence that was handed to law enforcement? What are the legal consequences for the state if sealing the PC is a cover-up? Hell, even sealing the PC seems like another obviously incompetent decision. I mean, holding on to the bullet evidence seems like it wouldn't have been needed had law enforcement used Allen and the witness's own interviews to justify a search, found the gun, tested it, and arrested Richard Allen. Some posts here. What is so surprising to me is the fact that the FBI was involved pretty quickly. I unfortunately somewhat expect local Delphi PD to not be prepared to handle this type of crime and mess it up, but the fact that the FBI didn't put the pieces together is mind-boggling. Or here on Mindshock, as we would say, mind-shocking. And was the FBI, like, why did they still not, they weren't able to get the Marathon gas station footage? Again, the Marathon gas station, which Keegan Kline happened to search on his phone, and they can't get the surveillance. The FBI claimed that they couldn't get it, it wasn't there, or that it was deleted, erased, or couldn't be recovered in some capacity. Does anybody buy that? I went over that so many times, that just, there's so many things that just do not sit well with this case, like nothing adds up here. So, Lady Batman posted this. It seems I remember early on it was reported that the FBI was in town or nearby that day. So they were already there before the crime took place. A response here by Rocket Surgeon. They had 1 or 2 field agents involved from the beginning. The larger team of 20 plus did not arrive until after the bodies were found. Another post here. With all they had and very few people on the trail at that time, although allegedly there's conflicting reports, because early reports said that there were dozens of people coming and going on the trails in the middle of that unseasonably warm day. A small law enforcement should have been able to handle this case no problem investigating further everyone they talked to. A 7th grade class could have closed this case right away. Is that insulting to 6th and 5th and 4th graders? Another solid post here. This is just the probable cause affidavit. We don't know what law enforcement took from his residence. Follow-up post here. Supposedly there's a reliable source that says that something strong evidence was found in the fire pit at his residence. Apparently there are also people here criticizing Doug Carter. They're pointing to an earlier interview here, no link, where Doug Carter supposedly stated, quote, everyone who was there that day was ruled out, end quote. And then, of course, just recently at the Halloween press conference just after, he stated that they hadn't ruled out anybody. Anybody? So he didn't even rule out himself? I mean, I don't know. It's weird. Definitely weird. So the official overlooking is explained on the Murder Sheet podcast as follows, that a civilian FBI employee mislabeled or misfiled information about Mr. Allen when he was interviewed by police not long after the murders of Libby German and Abby Williams in Delphi, Indiana. As a result, Mr. Allen's name fell off the radar and the case was unsolved for more than 5 years. Finally, an investigator trawling through old files uncovered misplaced information, and the 50-year-old local man was arrested and charged with the murders. What happened here was some sort of clerical error or misfiling by a civilian employee of the FBI, Miss Kane told The Independent. It was not a malicious error, just an unfortunate mistake where a clerical error let the Richard Allen tip sink to the bottom of the whole file, essentially. And only recently, when someone was going through the old tips, they found that tip and thought we need to follow up. So when people ask why has it taken 5 years to loop back to Allen, that's what we've learned. Mr. Greenlee added it was not the result of someone calling in a tip or someone incarcerated speaking up now, but it was someone in law enforcement going through old tips and discovering information from 2017. So let's go over Richard Allen's attorneys here. So on Fort Wayne's NBC.com article here, December 2nd, 2022. He is innocent. Delphi suspect attorneys release statement on client's involvement in murder investigation. Defense lawyers for Richard Allen say their client has tried to help investigators over the 5 years since Libby German and Abby Williams were killed. Richard Allen's attorneys released a statement after receiving numerous media inquiries about the case and ongoing investigation. They described the statement as their thoughts about the investigation into Allen. The statement started by declaring their client's innocence, noting that he's never had any legal trouble in the past. He is innocent and completely confused as to why he has been charged with these crimes, the attorneys wrote. The attorneys wrote that it was Allen who notified police about his presence on the trails near the Monon High Bridge the day Libby and Abby went missing. That he tried to help the investigation on more than one occasion, including a conversation with a conservation officer about seeing 3 girls on the trail. The probable cause affidavit released this week mentioned 3 people who came across a man on the trail the day Libby and Abby disappeared. The attorneys also noted that Allen did not dispose of his guns, car, or clothes, all of which were mentioned in court documents in the 5 years since the girls' deaths. He did not alter his appearance. He did not relocate himself to another community. He did what any innocent man would do and continued with his normal routine, the statement read. So here is the statement here, a press release. We do not want to try this case in the media, and we intend to adhere to the Indiana rules of professional conduct that provide guidance on pretrial publicity. Clearly, none of those memos were received in the Stephen Avery case. However, the police and prosecutor's office have conducted many press conferences over the 5+ years of this investigation and following our client's arrest. On the other hand, Rick's ability to assert his innocence have been reduced to only one short post-hearing press conference. Accordingly, we feel it is appropriate, necessary, and within the bounds of our rules of professional conduct to make a few comments concerning the probable cause affidavit and Rick's innocence. Rick is a 50-year-old man who has never been arrested nor accused of any crime in his entire life. He is innocent and completely confused as to why he has been charged with these crimes. The police did not contact Rick after Libby and Abby went missing. Rather, Rick contacted the police and voluntarily discussed being on the trail that day. Like many people in Delphi, Rick wanted to help any way he could. Rick contacted the police to let them know that he had walked on the trail that day, as he often did. Without Rick coming forward, the police probably would not have had any way of knowing that he was on the trail that day. See, that's an interesting point, although there are certain killers who like to become involved in the investigation and even taunt police. Again, I'm not alleging Allen is one of these, but I don't know if it's that black and white. Rick volunteered to meet with a conservation officer outside of the local grocery store to offer up details of his trip to the trail on the day in question. Rick tried to assist with the investigation and told the police that he did recall seeing 3 younger girls on the trail that day. His contact with the girls was brief and of little significance. Rick does not recall if this interaction with the conservation officer was tape recorded, but believes that the conservation officer scribbled notes on a notepad as Rick spoke to him. After Rick shared his information with law enforcement officials, he went back to his job at the local CVS and didn't hear from the police for more than 5 years. The next time Rick heard from police was in October 2022. This was approximately 2 weeks before a contested sheriff's election and within days of a federal lawsuit filed against the Carroll County Sheriff's Office by its former second-in-command, Michael Thomas. Probably all coincidental. In the lawsuit, Thomas claims that Thomas, had made suggestions and offered assistance in the investigation of a high-profile child homicide investigation, but those suggestions and offers were rejected by the sheriff. Thomas further claims that the sheriff and others in the department feared the disagreements with Thomas would become publicized as a result of the political campaign for sheriff. Thomas claims in the suit that he was ultimately demoted and replaced by Tony Liggett, who was later this year won the 2022 election for sheriff. Furthermore, Thomas claims he was also removed from other high-profile cases. Rick was ultimately arrested on or about October 28, 2022. Wait, so they don't know? In the 5 years since Rick volunteered to provide information to the police, Rick did not get rid of his vehicles or his guns and did not throw out his clothing. He did not alter his appearance. He did not relocate himself to another community. He did what any innocent man would do and continued with his normal routine. Although a certain percentage of guilty people could theoretically also do that. The probable cause affidavit seems to suggest that a single magic bullet is proof of Rick's guilt. It is a bit premature to engage in any detailed discussions regarding the veracity of the evidence until more discovery is received, but it is safe to say that the discipline of tumor mark identification ballistics is anything but a science. The entire discipline has been under attack in courtrooms across the country as being unreliable and lacking any scientific validity. We anticipate a vigorous legal and factual challenge to any claims by the prosecution as to the reliability of its conclusions concerning the single magic bullet. And we'll probably have to do a dedicated episode on this, but the way that you would show that is by having several different model guns eject a shell, and would different guns show the same signature if it was the same model, same year manufacture, etc., etc. I mean, obviously that's the scientific experiment to show that. On Rick's behalf, we argued that to have the PCA unsealed, Rick has nothing to hide. As importantly, we were hoping that we'd receive tips that would assist us in proving his innocence. Not surprisingly, we have been inundated with tips from a variety of sources, all of which will be vetted by our team. Although it is the burden of the prosecutor to prove Rick's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the defense team looks forward to conducting its own investigation concerning Rick's innocence. We appreciate those that have reached out to support his cause. The prosecutor mentioned at the last hearing his belief that others may have been involved in the killing, yet there was no mention in the PCA about a second suspect involved in the killing. The defense is confused by such discrepancies in the investigation and will be in a better position to respond as more discovery is received. Rick Allen owned a Ford Focus in February 2017. His Ford Focus is not in any way similar to the distinctive look of the PT Cruiser or smart car that was described by witnesses. It seems that the CCSD is trying to bend facts to fit their narrative. At this point in time, we have received very limited information about the case and look forward to having something more to view, that which was offered up in the sparse PCA. Moving forward, it is our intent to scrutinize the discovery as it is received and give the necessary attention to the volumes of tips we are receiving. To the extent we continue to discover information that points to Rick's innocence, we will offer up this information to the public, so long as we are not prohibited from doing so as a result of the recent request by the prosecutor for a gag order or by the Indiana Rules of Professional Conduct. So there you have it. That's the response here. I mean, it's curious. It's pretty curious. So the next hearing is January 13th, 2023, where discussing gag orders and such will be done. So that's curious. So Allen himself came forward. Now, some people that would believe he's guilty, he might have come forward because he realized people would identify him and it would look suspect if he didn't come forward. Is that a possibility? I don't know, just throwing that out there. Another post here in the Delphi subreddit, Delphi murder subreddit, regarding the PCA, can the state omit extra evidence they have against Allen and only provide enough evidence to get the affidavit signed? Just wondering why Kelsey German petitioned so hard to keep this sealed. Responses here, they just have to provide enough to establish probable cause. Definitely don't put everything they have in it. No clue why she wanted it sealed. Other responses here, yes, no prosecutor worth his or her salt would throw their full hand in an arrest warrant. There's more to be seen here. Which would explain a lot of things. And of course, if there's a whole page redacted, who else knows what's on it? Another post here by Wis Corrupted. Evidence they have that is not in the PCA. There's definitely a lot more evidence that has been found or is still being processed. One, he still had the Ford Focus he drove that day, and most of those cars have cloth seats with foam underneath that would be perfect for holding DNA, such as blood. Two, the gun was obviously handled by him during the murder, so there is possibly DNA on the gun, even if it is just from him touching it with bloody hands. Three, his cell phone data is obviously being looked at, judging by the PCA, so GPS data and cell tower pings are definitely going to play a role. That's a good point. Four, they confiscated many things from his house that aren't mentioned in the PCA, such as small books and a shoebox. They also dug up parts of his yard and a fire pit, so that may play a role. Five, they almost definitely have shoe or boot prints from the scene, so they can determine the shoe size of the killer, and since he is so short, he probably wears a very small shoe. I don't know about that last one, though, because if the searchers... I mean, there's even rumors that if the searchers found the bodies in the water and they pulled them up onto shore, that's one rumor. But even if that's not true, whoever found the body, if there was more than one person walking around that scene, which there appears to have been, how would you know which boot prints were from whom? An interesting post here. Some people are disputing that some of this was like an intended sexual assault that escalated. But an interesting post here from Fresca Esca. I just really don't think this guy would assault two girls from his tiny town and think he could get away with it without silencing the victims. They would see him at CVS or around and be able to identify him. So what's weird, though, did he just randomly snap that day? And previously, in terms of profiling, because this is Valentine's Day time, people were speculating this is someone that might have had a recent breakup, etc. From all accounts, I mean, he's still married, he's married at the time, still married now. I mean, does that match the initial profile? And of course, the profile could be wrong. I mean, obviously, we don't know anything for sure here. Mary Jane Vermont posted this regarding at which point he decided he was going to kill. Mary Jane Vermont thinks this before he got there. So only 2 minutes ahead and he went straight to the bridge. Lies have a grain of truth. He said he was looking down at the stock ticker. I think he was looking down at the alert that they were at the trails. He knew where they were going. It's still kind of weird, though, how someone could think they could get away with this in broad daylight in the middle of the... I mean, it's just weird. It's weird, especially a guy that lived there. If this was like some trucker passing through that was going to be gone in an hour, I mean, that seems to make more sense, but... An interesting post here by Generals 2022. We've all heard that the crime scene would have been bloody, but apparently after the bodies were removed, no one who went there ever saw any blood anywhere. Meaning the police took away all the leaves on the forest floor for analysis. If he spit or left behind any other biological materials on the leaves thinking that was safe, he would have left his DNA at the scene. The police must have analyzed every leaf at the crime scene if there was never any blood left behind after the site was processed. Interesting point there, too, and as always, whether local police or FBI, obviously in many cases they play things close to the vest. They might have DNA, they might have saliva, they might have a lot of things. Again, it would be difficult to prove, is it from the searchers who discovered the bodies and possibly even touched the bodies or somebody else. But if you have all the identities of everybody that was there and handled the bodies, and then there's yet another DNA sample that's unexplained, then, you know, that's a step in that direction. Others are also speculating that this conservation officer report somehow got lost. Now, again, people can say it was intentional or it's not intentional. Either way, apparently it was lost, which is why nobody followed up on it. But if it's really true that there were only a couple of people on the trails, how could they not account for this small handful of people? And then also, what about flannel shirt guy? Another poster, DFP Parker 78 posted this. How do you keep the gun and the clothes? The incompetence on both sides is disappointing. Unless, of course, it's not Richard Allen and those weren't the clothes, in which case maybe he would keep them, I don't know. Or if he's just that insane. That could also theoretically explain it. Another interesting post here. The only thing I can think is that they were so focused on Ron Logan as the prime suspect, the Richard Allen info got buried in a huge pile of leads. I'm sure there were others in the park that day. From the info in the PCA, it looks like they did use cell phone data to determine some of the people in the area and questioned them, Richard Allen included. Depending on when he was questioned, perhaps not all the evidence in the PCA has been discovered and therefore his statement forgotten. Either way, it's shoddy detective work to blame. Another post by Deduction Power here. I now know why Richard Allen's lawyers were not impressed with their evidence against him. I really hope they have DNA in the crime scene. I don't think it's Richard Allen's, though. If they do, they would have got that in the PCA, but they only got that bullet as the strongest linked to Richard Allen. The DNA they got must be from that accomplice, which curiously was never mentioned in the PCA unless that accomplice is the masked one. Don't witnesses in the PCA have two different clothing definitions? One was wearing jeans, one was wearing black clothing. Yeah, that's a good point, unless they were confused and they really only saw one guy. But, I mean, if there was a second guy, would he really have been walking the trails? Or would he have been elsewhere? Some more posts here regarding the supposed suspect who walked on Route 300 North, a distance of 0.8 miles from the cemetery to the old CPS building with muddy and bloody clothes. The eyewitness account from the PCA has me absolutely floored. It raises so many questions. Was his actual exit strategy to just walk back to his vehicle on Route 300, covered in blood and water and mud, or was his original plan that day something different and his exit strategy was hastily determined? If he planned to kill the girls on the north side of the creek, why not park somewhere closer? And if he wanted to park far enough away to not raise suspicion, why not have a better exit plan? I don't mean this to come off as a hot take, but is this guy just a complete idiot? Some responses here. He could have gone through the woods that parallel the MHB trail and then came out farther up Route 300 North and then had only a few minutes of exposure. I find it hard to believe he walked directly out of the woods into the cemetery and then walked 4/5 of a mile showing off his muddied and bloodied clothes for anyone to see. And you can count me one of those who, when I saw what street Richard Allen lived on and its proximity to Bridge Creek, that had to have been his escape route. Nice hidden area. He could change clothes into some jogging outfit and then bury the bloodied ones. He hops out on the street that connects from his to the creek, then he's just another local getting some exercise. Figured he probably waved at some neighbor or chatted them up to give him an alibi for that afternoon even. But instead, he was a complete dunce, parked his own vehicle where multiple witnesses could see it and report it. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, because if he lives that close, why is he driving all over the place and then walking all over the place? Yeah, I mean, this is kind of weird. Another post here. I'm thinking he was somehow tipped off, maybe via connections to the Anthony Shots account, or Keegan Kline himself. And law enforcement being so adamant about others being involved seems to support this theory of being tipped off. Or maybe he was stalking their social media accounts in advance about the victims planning on going to the bridge that day. I mean, he parked his car far away from the normal parking areas and did so in a way that hid his plates. When he sat on a platform looking at the fish, he was likely waiting for Abby and Libby to arrive. It just seems very premeditated in my opinion, and not many people actually walk all the way across the bridge to the dead end. He either did this dozens upon dozens of times, hoping for the perfect victims to fall into his trap, or he got incredibly lucky, or he knew they were going to be walking across that bridge to meet a hunk that drove a Lambo, i.e. Anthony Shots Catfish. I'd be really surprised if we learned that he did not park at that old CPS building that day, knowing fully well that he'd be murdering two specific targets. I think he must have knew he'd be committing murder. If he was planning a sexual assault, it's way too small of a town for the victims to live and not get identified soon afterwards. From the video, it appears he wasn't trying to hide his face, so he must have knew in advance that the victims weren't going to be capable of identifying him afterwards. I mean, there are still more things that don't really make sense, because if he's on social media, etc., and he sees the phone out, I mean, how would he not know that they could have been recording him and also be live streaming or whatever, and he still does whatever he does if Bridge Guy is this guy and if Bridge Guy's acting alone? T. Mike Bond here posted something pretty mind-shocking. Bitter Beat Poet, who had some great insight onto the case and possibly some inside info, theorized that the girls ran after the perp fell going down the hill. He thought perhaps Abby fell too. When the girls ran, the perp was able to grab Abby's leg and pull off her shoe. He then incapacitated her, and Libby tried to assist her friend. Libby then tried to flee, and he had her by the jacket, and she let him pull it off, but he later caught her, perhaps on the north side of the creek. If it was Richard Allen and he had a gun, perhaps he was having trouble catching Libby and cycled the weapon to get her to stop, which is how the bullet got discharged. I also wonder if Abby was dead on the south side of Deer Creek. I think Bitter Beat Poet said something to that effect. She could have been lying in the driveway lane that runs through there. Then, after he killed Libby, he went back and carried Abby over to where Libby was to conceal their bodies. I have no idea if this is even close to correct. The sad thing is, if one would have ran down the west side of the hill and the other the east, and neither went to aid the other, at least one, if not both, would be alive today. I don't think there was ever a chance the perp, if he had a gun, would have shot them to stop or kill them. There were too many people around that would have heard it. But theoretically, they would have also heard screams and such. So, yeah, I mean, again, the timeline here, there's just so many different variables here. None of them seem to really work. Like, the proper alignment of variables, I'm not sure if it's been found yet. I mean, perhaps law enforcement know. Perhaps law enforcement have all the details, and when it comes out at trial, it'll all add up, or perhaps not. Another post here. I honestly think Richard Allen did not think he would get away with the murders. I think he was emotional or angry and didn't care. He committed the crime in public and didn't really make any attempts to cover it up. Walking on the road covered in blood screams to me this is a guy who didn't care and was expecting he would be arrested. He never got rid of the gun or jacket he was wearing, came forward at being at the crime scene, even admitted all these years later that he was wearing the same clothes as Bridge Guy. 5 years later, Richard Allen probably doesn't want to be in prison, but at the time of the murder, Richard Allen could have just been angry and had just been in a fight or emotionally snapped and was like, expletive it, I don't care. I don't think there was a plan. I think Richard Allen went to the bridge to kill or commit sexual assault, but nothing specific. Now, that actually is more of an explanation, because if he really doesn't care about any of this, I mean, that actually explains these actions more than a lot of other things, especially if he was expected to be arrested right after doing it. Some more posts here also speculating on the nature of the fight. Because if there was some kind of fight, they're stating he looked like he had been in a fight. Is that a result of being bloody in the creek and moving bloody bodies as opposed to an actual fight? Southern Dig posted this. The implication of their clothes being found down creek from them, according to the PCA. Trigger warning, I think it could mean two scenarios. One, I'm so afraid that means they were sexually assaulted, which is disgusting, but means that there is likely some kind of DNA from the murderer, and hopefully it'll lead to a conviction. Or two, they fought for their lives and may have got his fingerprints, blood, or hair on them, and their clothes were taken off post-mortem and thrown into the river as a way to take off DNA evidence. What are your thoughts on this new information? And people are stating here, the Ron Logan search warrant affidavit states no visible signs of a struggle or fight. So, as always, plenty of unanswered questions here in the Delphi case. And hopefully more questions will be answered shortly. And if there is more than one perpetrator, there will be more evidence to that. I mean, there's just so many conflicting statements from all directions here. I mean, that's really why it's so tough. I mean, if there was some kind of consistency, something can be deduced here, but just the level of conflicting statements from all sides and sources, I mean, what can you make of that? The Mindshock listeners can leave their thoughts, theories, opinions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind in the comment section. If you enjoy the podcast, want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock True Crime. You're listening to the Delphi case series. This is episode 49, The Ring. And we will be examining allegations and possible evidence, as well as inside sources and leaks, regarding a possible ring. I mean, this has long been discussed that Richard Allen, if guilty, did not act alone. Or if it's not Richard Allen at all, that there's another ring and the true guilty parties are part of some kind of criminal ring. Of course, this episode, like many others, is not for the Dunning-Kruger crowd or coincidence theorists, which for whatever reason are highly attracted to this podcast, infesting the comment sections with their goofery. But again, without them, the Mindshock podcast would not exist. So we are, of course, grateful for all the Dunning-Kruger goofs out there. As always, if you find the Mindshock podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal, help support the Mindshock podcast, help spread logic and reason to a world where it is quickly becoming extinct. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. If you're not getting notifications, it has to do with the YouTube algorithm. Make sure you like more videos. Make sure you engage in the comments more. Comment a whole bunch of times, and then you should be getting the notifications. That appears to be how the YouTube algorithm works, at least nowadays. And you could also share on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons will get priority for case topological analysis, co-podcast requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind. Leave them in the comment section. So, of course, many think that the Richard Allen arrest was some kind of a ploy for him to name more names. Some believe it's connected to Keegan Kline and his father, Tony Kline, and possibly Travis Trexler, which may have started this whole ball rolling and all of these developments in the past 6 months or so. With Travis Trexler's arrest. If you haven't listened to the podcast episodes on Trexler, check those out. We go into the coincidental timeline of his arrest and the seemingly lack of media regarding his arrest. But after the Trexler's arrest, all of a sudden Kline is getting taken out of prison and taken to Rivers to point out possible evidence. And then a few months later, after this extensive search on the river, all of a sudden, Richard Allen is arrested. What's going on here? What's going on? So there's an interesting article in dailymail.co.uk. A lot of people find this site kind of dubious, but their track record is actually pretty solid, especially compared to, let's say, New York Times or some of these other mainstream news outlets, which are highly inaccurate and wrong about a lot of things about a lot of the time. So let's take a look at this article here. This is December 14th, 2022. Exclusive. Murdered Delphi teens were intended victims of a botched child sex kidnap plot, cops believe, as investigators dig up dead cat to match hairs found on girls to alleged killer's pet. Now, I will go over something that I've been talking about this on many, many different podcasts. For whatever reason, the Dunning-Kruger crowd, coincidence theorists, bootlickers, and authority-worshipping cultists, for whatever reason, they can't comprehend that in reality, things do not always go as planned. Criminals are not perfect. Criminal operations can be botched or mistakes made, plans abandoned midway. This isn't rocket science, but for whatever reason, a lot of goofs just can't comprehend this, especially in the JonBenet Ramsey case, the Maura Murray case. It's as if they think criminals either executed a plan perfectly or there was no plan. A lot of these goofs just can't comprehend the concept that things go wrong, or even when things don't go wrong, there's a psychological component where a criminal might bail on a plot midway. Even if technically nothing went wrong, they either got scared or for whatever reason, again, a lot of times these are not mentally well individuals that are committing these kinds of crimes, obviously. So if they get something in their head, mood swing, whatever, possible drug use, they might abandon a plan midway and change it. It's not rocket science. I've mentioned this in many podcasts, but again, this is just another concept that for whatever reason, many people don't get. This article is by Laura Collins, chief investigative reporter for the Daily Mail. So the main bullet points here: Richard Allen was allegedly part of a child sex ring that planned to kidnap and rape Liberty German 14 and Abigail Williams 13 in 2017. Allen has ties to pedophile Keegan Kline, who was previously named as a suspect. Both have also been linked to Ron Logan. The girls were found on his property. Sources say police dug up Allen's cat to match hairs found on the girls' bodies. And I know, again, people just write off Ron Logan. It's obviously, it's verifiable that the FBI was very interested in Ron Logan. Now, whether or not Logan was involved or not, that's a separate issue. But it's clear that the FBI were very interested in Logan. Now, there's rumors of some kind of pig roast, cemetery parties right next to his property. Again, these are all just rumors. Who knows what their veracity is, but of course, a certain percent of the time, rumors turn out to be true. A lot of the coincidence theorists and the Dunning-Kruger crowd, they obviously ignore that possibility. But yeah, so Logan, again, there's also unverified details. Has it been 100% confirmed that his phone actually did ping in that bridge area at the time the girls were allegedly there? I mean, we don't know that either. But if that's true, the people that say Ron Logan is completely innocent and doesn't know anything, how would that explain it? Now, if it is Logan on the bridge, if he is pissed off that they're on the bridge or he thinks they're trespassing on his property or whatever the case may be, there was supposedly another neighbor. I don't think this was Ron Logan. I actually don't know. But it was just reported that one of the neighbors in that area had yelled at Libby German before for trespassing. I went over that in a previous episode. Now, if that wasn't Ron Logan, or if it was somebody else and they told Ron Logan about it and he was pissed that people were just on that bridge because it's super dangerous, or there is that hangout spot under the bridge with beer bottles and other things. So supposedly that's some kind of hangout spot. Does Ron Logan resent that hangout spot? Was he pissed at them, or was he just trying to protect them? Who knows? But is it possible he actually did order them away, and then someone else was there who scared off Ron Logan himself, and Ron Logan possibly involved in other shady dealings or crimes, or simply not wanting to involve himself in any kind of trouble and not wanting to go to the police, was simply scared off and never talked about it? And he wasn't the one responsible for harming them, but he may have initiated some kind of a contact. But let's continue with the article here. Murdered Delphi teenagers Liberty German Abigail Williams were victims of a botched kidnapping plot hatched by members of a local pedophile ring. This is just one of a host of disturbing new details and allegations that can be exclusively revealed by DailyMail.com, including gruesome details about how the girls died and that the police dug up the prime suspect's dead cat in an effort to match hairs found on their bodies. Now, again, for the goofs out there, for those who are bereft of logic and reason and even basic children's level comprehension, this is Mindshock. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. I don't know how many times I have to say that, but triggered goofs are going off the rails in almost every podcast series on Mindshock because they're so deficient in basic English. They do not understand the following. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. I do not claim anyone is guilty or innocent. This is Mindshock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. Again, I'm probably going to have to say that 50 million more times, and the goofs out there are probably still not going to understand, but whatever. Let's carry on here. The revelations come just 2 weeks after authorities released a redacted version of the probable cause affidavit that led to Richard Allen's arrest. And we went over that in the previous episode. Make sure you're up to date on that if you're continuing here. Allen, 50, was charged on 2 counts of murder October 28th, 5 years after 14-year-old Libby and 13-year-old Abby were found dead in Delphi, Indiana on February 13, 2017. DailyMail.com has learned that shortly after his arrest, one of Allen's neighbors recalled seeing police digging in his yard. Now, DailyMail.com has been told that they were digging up the family's dead cat, whose hair proved a match for the samples found on one of the victims. Here's the thing, though, too. If I've gone over all the issues with the search before, the thermal imaging drone not finding the bodies, searchers searching both sides of the river, supposedly the exact area where they were eventually found, and then people turning away searchers from that area afterwards. So was there some kind of staging, et cetera, et cetera? But if Richard Allen was among the searchers and he did move the body, of course, there's reports that the bodies were originally in the water. and that they were dragged out onto the shore by searchers. So if Alan was involved in that, even if his cat hair is there, does that prove, I mean, beyond a reasonable doubt, obviously that is highly suspicious and definitely suggests involvement of some kind, but is that enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he himself alone murdered them? I'm not sure that it is. It really does not seem to be enough. But let's continue here for some mind-shocking revelations. Carroll County prosecutor Nicholas McClelland has openly stated that he believes Alan is not the only actor involved in this. Quote, Alan is not the only actor involved in this. I mean, this is a weird thing with so-called true crime aficionados or true crime followers. It's like they get instantly triggered when it's suggested that someone didn't act alone. It's a really weird thing. You would think that people actually care about justice for the victims and they would want to get everybody responsible and not hallucinate and pretend it's definitely only one guilty party. It's a weird thing. It happens in a lot of cases. I mean, just, again, coincidence theorist ideology of bootlickers and authority-worshipping cultists. They turn that logic switch off and they no longer care about truth and justice. So this quote is actually attributed in many different places. November 22nd, New York Post, Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen may not have acted alone. Quote, we believe Richard Allen is not the only actor involved in this, Carroll County prosecutor Nicholas McClelland said during a court hearing. People.com also reiterated that. So this has been reported. Daily Mail, again, vindicated, verified quotes here for the people who hate the Daily Mail for whatever reason. And while Allen has not been charged with kidnapping, prosecutors have alleged he attempted it. Now, sources, well, here's the thing though, attempted kidnapping is also a crime, but apparently he's not charged with that. Now, sources close to the investigation have claimed that Allen was acting with at least 2 other men and was involved in a child sex ring. So this is sources close to the investigation. So what are the options here? Daily Mail got this wrong, or they are the sources and they are claiming that, but they might be wrong as well. So this doesn't mean it's true just because it can be verified that sources are claiming. So, of course, it doesn't mean it's not true either. So the claim here, not 1, but 2 other men, and of course, theoretically, possibly more, but here claiming 2 other men. So 3 parties minimum, according to these law enforcement sources or sources close to law enforcement. Last month, DailyMail.com revealed pedophile Keegan Klein, 28 of Peru, Indiana, who is currently awaiting trial on a slew of child pornography charges, was cooperating with state police and prosecutors in a bid to reduce his own charges. And of course, there's a lot of goofs out there pretending that the reduction in charges had nothing to do with his cooperation. Sources told DailyMail.com, quote, the girls met Keegan Klein online and he arranged to meet them that day, but didn't go. Instead, he set them up to be kidnapped for the porn ring, end quote. I mean, that is quite a bold charge there. So these sources are claiming that Keegan Klein actually set up the meet, but then either all part of an original plan or a change of plans, arranged, gave them up for other parties to kidnap them. Huh. During one of several police interviews reviewed by DailyMail.com, Klein admitted to soliciting underage girls for nude pictures by catfishing them, posing as teenage girl Emily Ann or hunky actor model Anthony Shantz. Wait, what? So he posed as a teenage girl to get other girls to send nude what? How does that work? He thinks, I mean, is that a thing that girls just request nudes from other girls in some kind of non-sexualized thing? Is that like a thing? I don't know. This is kind of weird. The Anthony Shantz account, of course, is known about, but this Emily Ann account, you don't hear a lot of people talking about that. I believe it was mentioned before, but that's kind of weird. That's like Klein's go-to is to pose as a teenage girl. And apparently other girls don't have a problem with sending nude photos to other teenage girls. This is kind of a weird thing. I don't know. Okay. It was as Shantz that he communicated with German. Chillingly, Schatz was one of the last people to communicate with the girls before they took their fateful walk on Delphi's Monon High Bridge Trail. One of, so who are the others? Police interrogating Klein told him they did not believe he committed the murders, but was protecting the identity of whoever did. Now the source has revealed that Klein has cut a deal with prosecutors. That's in quotations. Cut a deal with prosecutors, end quote. The search warrants on Allen's home and property were carried out based on Keegan's testimony, the source told DailyMail.com exclusively. Okay, so this source is explicitly stating that Keegan Klein was directly responsible. His testimony is what facilitated the search warrants on Richard Allen's home. So directly related, because there's a lot of people claiming that these are all completely unrelated and Klein has nothing to do with any of it and is all a red herring. I mean, that would be awfully convenient and coincidental if it was a red herring. Indiana State Police, Carroll County spokesman Sergeant Jeremy Piers would neither confirm nor deny any of the details when put to him by DailyMail.com. He said, quote, law enforcement has not released any of those details or anything beyond what is in the probable cause, end quote. The sources claims that Klein, from whose devices police retrieved a slew of child pornography, knows Allen, and that the men met when both lived in Peru, roughly 40 miles northwest of Delphi. And of course, Jordan Sofer, another girl missing, found dead, who happens to look at the combination of Libby and Abby. I went over that in previous episodes. Check that out. Just another coincidence. And this is when Richard Allen also lived in the area with the Kleins, also in the area. Is this all mere coincidence? Some believe that Sofer's boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, or that guy that gave her a ride, he was responsible. There was a suicide. Allegedly, there was a suicide note. But again, that is uncorroborated, unsubstantiated, unverified. It was posted on Facebook. So, or the claim about it. I don't know if they posted the actual suicide note. They posted the claim about the suicide note. So the Sofer case, also just really weird. Not a lot of media. And even if the boyfriend possibly was involved, was it a similar situation? Where possibly Allen and Tony Klein or other individuals, they maybe approached or knew the boyfriend somehow and got him to participate in some kind of a kidnap and then to have Sofer enter this ring as well. The source claims that both men knew Ron Logan, who police first pegged as a suspect in the killings after the girls' bodies were found in his property some 1,400 feet from his home. An FBI search warrant served on Logan's home and property dated March 17, 2017, revealed that on February 14th, the day after the killings, Logan asked a relative to provide him with a false alibi. He told a cousin to say that a friend had picked him up and taken him to a fish store between 2 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. and that he didn't return home until 5:30 p.m. And of course, what does his phone prove? Okay. Continuing on here. The last time the girls were known to be alive was 2:13 p.m. when German made a brief cell phone recording of the now infamous bridge guy approaching with the words, guys down the hill. Logan's alibi was shown to be a lie, and text messages retrieved from his phone showed that he was out of the house and in the vicinity of the murders on the evening of February 13th. The FBI document also noted Logan asked his relative to lie for him the following morning before the crimes were even discovered. I mean, that's one of the most damning pieces of evidence there. I talked about that on the Logan podcast because this was before the bodies were discovered. So if they were missing and presumably to be found either partying somewhere or if they were lost and died of natural causes elsewhere, for whatever reason, he's desperate for an alibi before any bodies are found. That's something I really couldn't get around. All the other issues you could say are circumstantial, et cetera, write them off, but that's a damning one. That one's tough to get around. Logan died at the age of 84 on January 24th, 2022, and was never named as a suspect. But now, sources have told DailyMail.com that Logan, who had a history of violence against women, was involved. According to the source, investigators believe that the plan had been for Allen to kidnap the girls and bring them to Logan's home where he and allegedly Klein would rape them. They said, well, it doesn't say whether it's Keegan or Tony here, huh? That's interesting. They said the girls were supposed to be kidnapped. This is a quote here. The girls were supposed to be kidnapped for the sex ring, but something went wrong, and he knifed and raped one and almost decapitated the other. Logan and Klein never met the girls, end quote. Now, of course, I think the police did state there was no sexual assault of any kind, but again, are they intentionally misstating that? A lot of gullible goofs out there, they think law enforcement can never be mistaken or would never make false statements for any reason ever. So they just take on blind faith whatever law enforcement releases, hallucinating that there's no fallibility, that there's no corruption, and there's nothing of any kind other than pure gospel coming from law enforcement. I mean, bootlickers are a weird bunch that way. Police have been tight-lipped about the girl's cause of death, saying only that there was a lot of blood at the scene. Now, DailyMail.com has been told that the murder weapon was a knife and that both girls bled out. Speaking well ahead of the probable cause affidavit's release, the source revealed that the girls were killed near the river. Information since confirmed, but then moved and posed naked under a tree. The FBI search warrant served on Ron Logan's home also included law enforcement's belief that the killer may have taken souvenirs. Okay, so let's, before we go to the rest of the article, I mean, there's a lot of mind-shocking revelations, allegations, and theories presented here, but just quickly on Ron Logan, I do want to bring this up. In the first couple of episodes, and the episodes on Ron Logan, I explicitly floated this theory that there's a few different perpetrators, and they either turned on each other, something happened, because if they panicked, and then now they want to frame Ron Logan, who was possibly involved or to be involved. So they were trying to frame Logan. That's why they dumped it on his property, even if he was involved. Because the main point against Logan, if he was involved either by himself or as some kind of primary actor with some kind of authority over others, why would he have the bodies put on his own property? That doesn't make any sense. Yet someone trying to frame him, and then other people are saying if there's trying to frame him, then he wouldn't be involved. This is, of course, a false dichotomy logical fallacy. On Mindshock, we don't fall for these silly logical fallacies. Because if Rogan was part of a circle that was involved, and they turned on him and wanted to point the finger at him and wanted everybody to think that he was solely involved, then they would do that, wouldn't they? Even if he really was involved. This was one of the McGuire theories I did float. You can go back to the earlier episodes and listen to them. Is that what happened here? Because what other possible explanation could there be to account for all of the variables here? Now, maybe there are others. I'm not claiming that there's not another explanation. I'm not even claiming any of this is true because, again, this is Mindshock. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. The only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. Anybody who wasn't there doesn't know how it went down or who exactly was involved, no matter how hard they hallucinate and pretend, which for whatever reason on social media people love to do. So regarding Ron Logan's possible involvement, it doesn't necessarily mean he wasn't involved, because if they turn on each other, I mean, these kinds of criminals, they're not necessarily trustworthy or honorable. I don't think anybody would argue that. So why would all these Dunning-Kruger groups hallucinate that it's impossible for criminals to turn on each other and possibly point the blame at one of the involved parties, even if he really was involved? Now, there's, of course, strange issues with Garrett Kurtz. And supposedly he viewed Ron Logan as an uncle. He also claimed that there's ex-girlfriend who actually saw a video, a snuff film of these murders. I mean, there's a lot of strange oddities revolving around Kurtz and Ashley Garth. They just can't be written off. It's possible that these criminals do know each other and know of the crimes, even if they weren't directly involved. That, of course, is a possibility. Just bringing that out there because not a lot of people are talking about Kurtz and Garth anymore. But it's possible that they do know some of these parties involved. So let's continue on here with the Daily Mail article. DailyMail.com has been told that underwear and a cell phone were taken from the scene. A cell phone? Huh. The newly released probable cause affidavit also reveals that one of the girls could be heard saying the word gun. And this was, of course, long rumored. According to the source, the killer was wearing a gun on his waistband. Police discovered a Sig Sauer model P226 as well as knives from Allen's home. Allen's wife, Kathy, 50, confirmed that the weapons were his. Forensic testing of an unspent round found near the girls' bodies showed that it had been cycled through Allen's gun. Okay, just a quick point on that. Supposedly, there's a lot of dispute over how accurate that is. Like, the people doing the tests are just eyeing it and saying that it resembles the chamber. Again, I haven't seen any conclusive studies where they took the same model gun from the same year and were able to differentiate which gun they were cycled through. So, yeah, I mean, I'd probably have to do a dedicated episode on that to do a deep dive into how all that's done. But apparently, there is a lot of dispute regarding the validity and accuracy of these tests. According to the probable cause affidavit, even though the bullet had never been fired, it bore telltale and unique signs of having been an Allen's weapon. Now, is it an Allen's weapon or that specific model gun of that year, which, of course, other people could also have? The affidavit states between October 14, 2022 and October 19, 2022, the Indiana State Police Laboratory performed an analysis on Allen's 6-hour model P226. The laboratory performed a physical examination and classification of the firearm, function test, barrel, and overall length measurement, test firing, ammunition component characterization, microscopic comparison, and NIBIN, National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. The laboratory determined the unspent round located within 2 feet of victim 2's body had been cycled through Richard M. Allen's 6-hour model P226. Now again, so this is not on the body, so this is within 2 feet of the body. So that's a tough one too, because can they determine when the bullet ended up there? Because let's say they were just shooting for fun or hunting, whatever they were doing, or not even shooting, just cycling. If Allen knows Logan and they were there, let's say a week before, and the bullet was left there, because if it's not placed on top of the body, I mean, can they really say that it was there, that it wasn't there before? I mean, that's, I mean, again, if they have further evidence, I mean, was it in blood? Was there something that gave away that it was there after or during the murders or body movement, as opposed to like a week or 2 or a year before? Again, nobody's really addressed that. Allen could not explain how a bullet that had been cycled through his gun could have ended up there. He denied ever having been on the property or having lent his gun to anybody. Now, here's another point, too. Like, anybody who's been around Allen or in his house or had access or been around Allen with the gun, if they cycled the bullet and then took it and then placed it at the scene, I mean, again, if this is some kind of a botched plot and the string pullers of this plot want Logan to go down and then that didn't work, now they maybe want Allen to go down. Now, let's say they are guilty and part of the ring, but the people at the top of the ring want these guys to go down. Theoretically, they could so-called frame guys that actually are guilty of some level of complicity. I don't hear anybody talking about that. This is Mindshock, of course, and we're going to go over every angle. That's the first thing that jumps out at me. That these guys, that Logan and Allen might actually be complicit in the plot and guilty to some extent, or to a full extent, but there's other people involved that want only them to go down, which, of course, true justice would not be served if that is true, because all the people responsible in every single way should be held accountable. Allen has strenuously denied any involvement in the killings, although he admitted to police that he was on the trail that day that the girls went missing. That's interesting phrasing. Did he deny involvement in being part of any ring? According to the probable cause affidavit, several youngsters saw him there ahead of the murders. His lawyers say he's simply the wrong guy. They have dismissed the probable cause affidavit as flimsy and described the forensics related to the unspent bullet as junk science. Allen is also someone who his lawyers have asserted in a newly filed motion stands no chance of a fair hearing should his trial be conducted in Carroll County, Indiana. They argue that the likelihood of a tainted jury pool, should it be drawn from the girls and Allen's home county, is excessive. They state that the best way to ensure a fair trial is to move it at least 150 miles from Carroll County. The judge has yet to rule on the motion. A bond hearing for Allen, who is currently being held without bond, has been set for February 17th, and he is set to go to trial March 20th, 2023. A lot of people also kind of point to the coincidental nature that there just happened to be a witness seeing him muddy and bloody walking on the road. Now, if this account is true, I mean, there's a lot of problems here. If something went wrong, did he really kill them at the time alleged, or were they held somewhere overnight? There's, of course, what was it, the 2 a.m. screams reported. Nobody wants to talk about those in that general area. So did they actually make it to Logan's? I mean, supposedly if they had the warrant on Logan's, you would think they would have. I mean, maybe they did find further info and they just haven't. That's not released yet. So of course, until the trial, when everything comes out, if there even is a trial, I mean, we'll see what happens with in the meantime. If more information comes out, I mean, it could possibly check all the boxes, dot the I's, cross the T's, and make this all make sense. Because as of yet, there are many, many unknown variables here. A lot of people hallucinating and assuming. So we really don't know without the further information. But if there was some kind of botch job double cross, Keegan Kline supposedly mentioned to a cellmate or somebody that he was supposed to be waiting in the car. Did he get spooked, run off, and now Alan has no ride? Like, it really doesn't make sense why he would park at that old CPS building or whatever, walk that distance. I mean, there's a lot that doesn't make sense. But if this was part of a larger plan with missing variables that we don't know about, and there was a quick getaway, was there some kind of backup plan where if the girls didn't show, or even if they did show, or whatever went down, the alibi always was, oh yeah, I'm going to be out walking the trails if people saw him. So that was kind of like the backup. And then whether or not the crime occurs or not, there's possibly a quicker getaway vehicle or something to take him back to the other vehicle. Again, there's so much unknown. Then of course, there's the shady business regarding the Marathon gas station, which Keegan Kline is searching on his phone, and then the FBI supposedly can't recover footage from the hard drive. I mean, does anybody believe that? That Quantico in the 2010s, early 2020s doesn't have the technology to recover footage from a gas station security camera. Does anybody believe that? I mean, come on. It's just, that's kind of weird to me. That's weird to me. So are they intentionally botching this investigation because there's FBI involvement? There's investigator suicides, there's so many issues with this case that nobody wants to talk about. A mountain of coincidences and stacks of coincidences on top of coincidences. There's so much here that doesn't make any sense. And making sense of everything, there's really no theory that accounts for everything as of yet. Unless, pretty much the ring theory with possible upper agency involvement, that might be the only thing that accounts for it, because if there is some upper agency involvement, FBI agents, whatever, obviously they didn't really want to move on that Olympic trainer guy, whatever, and that whole scandal that's been known about for years. And of course, if you've listened to the Johnny Gosch series exposing the Franklin scandal, going all the way to the White House with all of that shady business, alleged Bush involvement with child trafficking and all of this insanity. If this is going on in Delphi, coincidentally, some of the agents were also involved in that Olympic scandal. So all coincidental probably. But if it's not coincidental, and there's an intentional cover-up and they possibly wanted this unsolved, or possibly to just throw it all on Logan and maybe Richard Allen, or maybe the plan was originally Logan, particularly if he died, but then there's some agents, of course, not in on it, so they're still doing honest, hard investigation, and they're not buying it, so this thing there's backup plans being enacted, et cetera, et cetera. So could that theory account for everything? I don't know. There's still yet more strangeness with Cody Patty being one of the neighbors of Richard Allen, allegedly. Again, we've gone over that in previous episodes. There's just so many things that don't make sense. It's really hard to make heads or tails of any of this. Now, of course, a lot of coincidence theorists, authority-worshipping cultists, they'll never entertain those theories despite all the mountains of evidence in other cases of where this has actually happened. But they'll hallucinate and pretend it can't actually happen in this case, which is the same thing that was done in the other cases before it all came out. So the track record of coincidence theorists and authority-worshipping cultists, not very good. So I'm going to go over one more article here. This is fox59.com. where there's another interesting nugget here. This is December 1st, 2022. Defense and law enforcement spar over Delphi murders investigation. This is by Russ McQuaid. An excerpt from this article here. The recent focus on Allen's alleged involvement in the killings happened just as prosecutors and investigators were turning up the heat on Keegan Kline, a Peru man they suspect of communicating with Libby on social media app the night before her death. Kline has been incarcerated awaiting trial in Miami County since the summer of 2020, but it was only this past summer that his attorney, which the acquiescence of the prosecutor, convinced the judge to delay the trial as both sides were involved in negotiations. Within days, Indiana State Police divers were searching the Wabash River, where a source indicates several guns and knives were discovered, but none of them linked to the Delphi case. And then, of course, they don't mention here, this also coincides with Trexler's arrest. Quote, "This all comes back to Peru," end quote. A source told Fox 59 News as the Miami County city is not only the hometown of Kline, but just 10 miles south of Mexico, Indiana, where Richard Allen lived most of his life. So this source here, talking to Fox, is saying it all comes back to Peru. That doesn't sound like Kline's not involved. Because why are they saying it all comes back to Peru when Richard Allen is in Delphi? And Richard Allen was just arrested. Why are they constantly saying it all goes back to Peru? And again, they're saying here, Keegan Kline, negotiations, etc. The timing of all of this. How coincidental is all of the timing here? Okay, I'm going to go over one more thing from Keegan Kline's transcript, where he states here during this police interview, in the middle of the interview, he states, okay, someone shoots someone and then they're with the person that happens a lot and they get charged for it. And they say that they killed them. That doesn't mean that they killed him. Police respond, yeah, that's why we asked you initially, is there anyone else that had access to your phones? Okay, so Keegan Kline is bringing this up of his own volition. He's saying, as if this is a mere hypothetical. Maybe it is, but it's curious that he chose this hypothetical. Someone shoots someone and then they're with the person that happens a lot and they get charged for it. And then they're with the person, so they're not with the person at the moment of the killing, but they're with the person after? Is that what he's saying? Like, what is his subconscious revealing here in this curious statement here by Keegan Kline? What does everybody make of this? I'll leave everybody with that. Draw your own conclusions, thoughts, theories, any kind of comments at all, leave them in the comment section. As always, if you find the Mindshock podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Help support Mindshock. Help us get more mind-shocking content out there with logic and reason in the forefront, keeping awareness up in cold cases, recent cases, wrongful convictions, any and all cases. Awareness is key. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like for notifications. If you're not getting the notifications, just like and comment more, or comment a whole lot more. That's how the YouTube algorithm works. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast requests. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.